Good evening. If you found your way here tonight, maybe your day's been long. Maybe your mind is still racing a little. Or maybe you just need a voice in the quiet. So, breathe. Let the world slow down, just for a while. Tonight, I'll take you deep into a forest where time doesn't move the way it should. Where someone who wanted to disappear found something that had been waiting. This isn't a story to scare you. Not really. It's a soft tale of silence, of memory, of the kind of hunger that lives under roots and breathes with the trees. So, curl up. Let your eyes grow heavy. And if the woods call to you in your dreams tonight, just remember, not everything that's quiet is safe.
I saw someone in my bathroom mirror, but only when the lights were off. I don't use the bathroom at night anymore, not because it's broken, not because I'm afraid of the dark, but because someone is waiting for me in the mirror when the lights are off. At first, I thought it was sleep deprivation. That week I'd been doing night shifts non-stop, barely sleeping 4 or 5 hours a day. My eyes were always burning, my head spinning. My friends told me to take a break. I considered it until that first night. That night I woke up around 2 a.m. thirsty. I crept to the kitchen, trying not to wake my girlfriend sleeping beside me. As I passed the bathroom, I decided to splash some water on my face. I didn't turn the lights on. I knew the way, and the faint glow from the living room was enough. I bent down, scooped cold water onto my face. It felt refreshing, but when I looked up, when the dim light from the hallway faintly lit the mirror, I froze. In the reflection behind me, there was someone else. I stood alone in that narrow bathroom, but the mirror showed another figure, off to the right, behind my shoulder, tall, thin, indistinct, their face lost in shadow, a human-shaped void. I spun around. No one, just the white wall, smooth and harmless, the same cramped, silent bathroom as always. When I turned back to the mirror, the shadow was gone. I tried to reassure myself. Too tired. Just a trick of the light. I switched the light on. Cold white light flooded the room, chasing away all illusions. Nothing there but me. I didn't tell anyone. Went back to sleep. Told myself I'd avoid washing up in the dark, but the next night I was thirsty again. And I forgot. This time I just meant to rinse my mouth. Again, no light. I lifted my head from the sink and froze. The shadow was back, but not far away this time. It was right behind me, close enough that I felt like its shoulder was brushing mine in the mirror. I stood still, barely breathing. My hand trembled, and I dropped the glass I was holding. It shattered loudly. I hit the light switch immediately. Nothing. My girlfriend woke up from the noise. She ran in, asking what happened. I lied, said I tripped. She made me promise to rest the next day. I nodded, but I was deeply unsettled. I began paying more attention to the mirror. During the day it was fine, clear, normal, reflecting everything as it should. But at night, as the light faded, something felt wrong in the bathroom, like someone was waiting for me to turn off the light. On the third night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, eyes wide open, mind racing. I grabbed my phone and decided to record it. I entered the bathroom, turned off the light, and raised the phone. Its screen glowed faintly. I filmed myself in the mirror, slowly panning to show behind me. Nothing. I panned back. Still just me, and the plain white wall behind. I lowered the phone, looked directly into the mirror, and stopped breathing. In the mirror, the shadow stood behind me again, this time tilting its head as if studying the phone I was holding. I panicked, turned on the light. Again, no one. But my phone, despite filming a video, had saved nothing. Just a black screen. I stayed up all night. The next morning I made excuses to skip work. I couldn't leave the house without knowing whether that thing was still trapped in the mirror or had followed me. That afternoon, I tested again, turned off the bathroom light, stared into the mirror in daylight. Nothing. Just me. But when I used the infrared camera filter on my phone, the screen showed a faint distortion. Right, where the shadow had stood, I started to suspect, not myself, but the mirror. I looked into it. It wasn't part of the house. I'd bought it when I moved in, a round vintage-style mirror with a black metal frame from a second-hand store. I drove back there. The store had been closed down. A for sale sign hung on the front. I asked nearby shop owners. One old man vaguely remembered the owner had died in an accident, fell into a mirror and broke his skull. A bizarre death. No one knew why he fell. Back home, my heart pounding, I searched for the receipt. It only had a handwritten address, no store name. On the fourth night, I covered the mirror with black cloth, taped the door shut. My girlfriend asked what I was doing. I said I was fixing the wiring. I didn't want her involved. That night, I had a dream. In it, I stood before the mirror, dim light around me. The shadow was no longer behind me. It was inside the mirror, on the other side of the glass. This time, I saw its face. It was my face, but older. Pale, sunken eyes without pupils, skin peeling like burnt paper. And it was smiling, not with its mouth, but with presence. A quiet, cruel smile I felt slicing through me like a blade. I woke up with a long scratch across my cheek. I checked everything. No sharp objects, no long nails, but the scratch was real, red and bleeding. I told my girlfriend it was from keys in my sleep. She looked suspicious, but I laughed it off. I couldn't tell her. If I did, she might look into the mirror. On the fifth night, I set up a small infrared security camera facing the mirror, locked the bathroom door, turned off the lights, and waited. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. At 3:17 a.m., the screen began to flicker. Then, slowly, a dark shape appeared in the mirror. It didn't reflect anything in the room. It didn't move, just stood there, staring at the camera. Then it raised its hand and knocked on the mirror. 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was clear in the footage, dry and sharp, like fingernails tapping glass. I shivered. Stopped the video. I didn't know what to do. Smash the mirror? But if it was a door, breaking it might let it out. Throw it away. But cursed objects always find their way back. I called a feng shui master my mom once mentioned, told him vaguely. The place felt off. He arrived, walked around, then stopped in front of the bathroom. "There's something here," he said, eyes fixed on the door. I swallowed hard, led him in, after removing the black cloth. He stood before the mirror for a long time, then said, "This isn't an ordinary mirror. It doesn't reflect, it absorbs. It doesn't show you yourself. It shows you what it wants you to become." I asked hoarsely, "What will I become?" He didn't answer, just told me to seal it with salt, ash from peach wood, and never, ever look at it in darkness. I followed his instructions. On the 6th night, I locked the bathroom, slept in the living room, but at 2:46 a.m., I heard knocking from inside the bathroom. Knock, knock, knock. 3 even, deliberate taps, like someone waiting for me to answer. I didn't sleep again. The next morning, my girlfriend asked why I kept staring at the bathroom door. I forced a smile. Then she said something that froze me to my core. Last night, I dreamed you were standing in the bathroom, but the mirror didn't show your reflection. The seventh night. I set the camera one last time. Not directly at the mirror, but at an angle to catch its reflection. Turned off the light and waited. At 3 a.m., the devil's hour, the mirror began to darken, even though there was still faint ambient light. Its surface no longer reflected anything, just a black void. Then slowly, a familiar figure emerged. It was me, but not current me. A me with scorched skin, patches of missing hair, milky white eyes. I was smiling, a grin stretching unnaturally wide. Then the mirror fogged up, and letters appeared, written by an unseen finger. Turn off the light. I stood, drenched in sweat. When I looked at the camera screen again, the mirror was blank. No figure, no writing. I removed the mirror the next morning, wrapped it in several layers of cloth, and brought it to a church. Left it in their storage basement. The priest asked if I wanted it blessed. I just said, "Don't let anyone open it." To this day, I don't know what that thing was. A ghost? A dark version of myself? A creature using the mirror as a gate? I only know one thing. I saw someone in the mirror, but only when the lights were off. And last night, as I walked past the now mirrorless bathroom, I still heard knocking. My door camera captured a photo of me sleeping while I was on a business trip. I'm a systems engineer, often away for days on work trips. Tight schedules, cheap hotels, cold food. I'm used to all of it. But what happened last month? That defies every bit of experience I have. I left home early Monday morning, catching the first flight to Da Nang. The hotel I stayed at was a bare-bones place for budget business travelers. Stiff bed, humming AC. I hated sleeping alone in unfamiliar rooms, but at least I always knew where I was. Or I thought I did. Tuesday night, I got a notification from the security camera app connected to my door. Motion detected at 2:14 a.m. I opened the clip. The camera faces my front yard and steps. Nothing unusual. Dark sky, dim yellow streetlights, a stray cat darting past. But when I slowed it down, one frame stopped my heart. A person was standing at the door. No clear face, no movement, no sound, just standing there, silently, as if listening. Then suddenly they looked up, straight into the lens. Not the way people usually look. It was like they knew I was watching from my phone, like their gaze cut right through the screen. And then the clip ended. I tried to brush it off. Could have been some random stranger. Cameras in residential areas catch weird stuff all the time. But the next night, another clip came in, this time around 2 a.m. And this time, it wasn't from the door camera. It was from inside my living room. I've never installed an indoor camera. I live alone. No pets. All my cameras are outdoors. I'm absolutely sure of that. Yet the video clearly showed my living room from the far corner, pointed toward the grey couch, and there, lying on it, was me. Me, or someone who looked exactly like me, sleeping soundly on the couch. Hands limp, mouth slightly open. The dim light highlighted my face. It felt like all the blood in my body drained away. I was in Da Nang, watching this from my hotel bed. How could I be home? I thought I was being pranked. I called my best friend, the only one with a spare key to my place. He swore he hadn't been there in weeks, and he had no idea about any indoor cameras. I logged into the camera system to check. All access was fingerprint protected. No unusual logins, No history of someone breaking in. I started to feel like I couldn't breathe. Thursday night, no video, no motion alerts. I almost felt relieved. Maybe it was a system glitch, some deepfake prank. Tech is terrifying these days. I tried to sleep. Friday, a new clip came in at 1:58 a.m. from the kitchen. I was standing at the counter, back to the camera. In my right hand, a carving knife. I wasn't moving, just standing completely still. My shadow flickered on the wall, but my body was frozen. Then I smiled. Not a happy smile. It was lopsided, stretching too far. My face didn't move at all except for the mouth, like my skin was being pulled by invisible strings. I've never seen a face like that, especially not my own. I couldn't sleep that night. I was too scared to close my eyes. Every time I blinked, I saw myself standing in the kitchen, lifeless as a mannequin, the knife glinting under the light. I came home Saturday morning, earlier than planned. I didn't tell anyone. I needed to see for myself. I needed to know I wasn't losing my mind. Everything in the house was exactly the same. The door showed no signs of tampering. The kitchen was tidy. The couch had no dents. There were no indoor cameras. I checked every inch of the ceiling, every light fixture. I thought maybe I'd imagined it, that a week of no sleep had pushed me over the edge until I checked the front door camera again. Footage from Friday night. 3:09 a.m. A person stood at the door, back to the street, wearing a black hoodie, hood pulled low. And in their hand was a mini camera. They opened the door. It wasn't locked. They stepped inside like they were coming home. But before closing it, they turned and looked into the front camera. I'd never seen that face before. But he looked exactly like me. Not just the face, the tilt of the head, the quiet eyes, the way his right hand curled like it was used to holding something. The me in the video left home on Monday morning, but somehow it never really left. Called the police. They came and checked the house. No signs of forced entry, no one inside, no strange objects, no hidden cameras, nothing. They leaned toward the theory that the footage was edited, that someone was playing a cruel joke, that I was stressed. They suggested I see a psychologist. I don't blame them, because after that night, there were no more videos. No one came to the door, no images from inside, until last night. I fell asleep on the couch, TV still on. When I woke up, I saw a new motion alert, 2:14 a.m. I opened the video. The door camera showed it clearly. I was standing outside the door, standing still, no knocking, no ringing, just staring directly into the lens and smiling. Someone pretended to be me to pick up my son from school. I got the call at 2:36 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I was in line at Starbucks, checking my phone to kill time while waiting for my drink. "Mr. Walsh?" said a cautious female voice. "This is Principal Hardy from Sandridge Elementary. Is everything okay?" My stomach dropped. You don't get calls like that unless something's wrong. Yes, of course. Why? What happened? Is Liam all right? There was a pause. A small, dreadful silence. "Well, that's the thing," she said slowly. "A woman came to pick him up today. She said she was his mother." My mind went blank. "I'm sorry. What?" She had ID. She knew Liam's full name, your name, even your address. But when our staff checked the pickup list, there was no record of her. When we told her she wasn't listed as an authorized guardian, she became agitated. I was already out the door, coffee forgotten. Wait, where is Liam now?" "He's safe. She didn't take him, but she was very convincing, Mr. Walsh. Frankly, It was unsettling. "I'll be right there," I said. 10 minutes. I broke every speed limit between the coffee shop and Sandridge Elementary. It wasn't a long drive, but every red light felt like a taunt. My heart was pounding so hard it made my hands shake on the wheel. I'm a single dad. Liam is 7. His mother left when he was 2. No custody battle, no visitations. Just one day gone, like she never existed. It was hard at first, but Liam and I figured it out. We had our routines, our inside jokes. I made his lunch every morning. He drew me silly cartoons on sticky notes. He was my whole world, and now someone tried to take him. Principal Hardy met me at the front office. She was mid-50s, glasses on a chain, and had the kind of calm professionalism that made her perfect for handling panicked parents. "He's in the counselor's office with Ms. Barrow," she said. "He's fine, a little confused, but fine." I nodded quickly. "Who was the woman?" "We don't know. She claimed to be Megan Walsh, your wife." I felt like I'd been punched. "That's not possible." "She had ID, a Pennsylvania state license, your address, your last name. She knew Liam's birthday, his teacher's name. She even knew he liked blue raspberry gummies." I stared at her. "How?" She said she was back in town, claimed there was a miscommunication. "And you forgot to update the pickup list." She had a very calm, confident demeanor. That last part chilled me. She showed up exactly at 2, claimed she wanted to beat the traffic, said she was surprising him. I shook my head. There's no one in our lives who could do this. No one. She asked Liam to come with her. That's when the staff intervened. "She talked to Liam?" "Yes," she said gently. He said she looked like a picture of Mom, but didn't recognize her voice. He said something felt off. God bless my son. The woman left before the police arrived. She claimed she had an appointment and stormed out. They caught a glimpse of her car on the security camera. Dark blue Hyundai, plates partially obscured. Couldn't read the whole thing. She wore large sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat. No other good angles, no name popped in our system. I filed a report. I gave every detail. Police took my phone, scoured social media. No leads. I took Liam home and locked every door. That night, he slept in my bed. "Daddy," he whispered as we lay there. She smelled like the house. "What do you mean?" She smelled like the laundry room, like Mommy's old sweatshirt. I didn't sleep. The next morning I called my ex, just to be sure. The number was dead. Her last known address, somewhere in Oregon, was 6 years out of date. Her parents didn't want to talk to me. They hadn't heard from her either. I checked our family photos. Only 2 of them had her. I'd thrown most away during the early, angry years, but Liam had a few, tucked in an old box. She had long dark hair, pale skin, sharp chin. That's what Liam must have meant by a picture of Mum. Whoever this woman was, she wasn't Megan, and she wasn't just pretending to be a generic parent. She was pretending to be my wife. She knew things, details that weren't public, details no stranger should know, like how Liam liked blue raspberry gummies, or how Megan's old sweatshirt smelled after laundry, or how she smiled in that one photo we kept in the bottom drawer. On Friday, I installed a security system, cameras, motion sensors. I added chain locks. Liam thought it was fun, like a spy movie. I tried to keep it that way. That weekend, I barely let him out of my sight. Grocery shopping, laundry, yard work. He was always within reach. I didn't want to be the paranoid dad, but something was wrong, and I could feel it like a vibration in my teeth. Saturday night, I got a phone notification. Motion detected front door camera. 2:13 a.m., I opened the app. At first, I thought it was a glitch. The porch light showed nothing, just empty steps. Then, slowly, too slowly, A shape entered the edge of the frame, just a sliver, a hand, delicate fingers pressed against the doorframe, then a shoulder, then half a face. It was a woman, pale skin, long dark hair. She never looked directly at the camera. Her face was angled away, turned slightly down, like she knew where the lens was and wanted to avoid it. Then she backed away, still never looking up, and was gone. Sunday morning I took Liam to the park, somewhere crowded, open. I needed fresh air, noise, witnesses. He was climbing on the jungle gym when a woman sat beside me on the bench. I flinched hard. "Sorry," she said quickly, hands raised. "Didn't mean to startle you." She was mid-30s, brown hair, wearing sunglasses. "You have a cute kid," she said. "Thanks," I said stiffly. "I have one too, a little girl." I nodded, said nothing. "I lost her," she said. "Last year." I turned to look at her. She was smiling, but her eyes behind the glasses, what little I could see, were empty. Flat. "You ever feel like you're not supposed to be someone's parent?" she asked softly. "Like maybe you just borrowed them?" I stood up. "I think we're done here." She didn't follow me, but she whispered something as I walked away. A name. Liam. I called the police again. They took another report. Said it matched the general description. No fingerprints, no charges. Could be coincidence, they said. It wasn't. That night, Liam asked if he could sleep in his own bed again. I wanted to say no, but I couldn't scare him more. At 2:13 a.m., I woke up without knowing why. I checked the camera feed. She was back. This time, she was closer, pressed up against the glass, still not looking at the lens, just listening. I watched the live feed as she slowly pressed her ear to the door and whispered something I couldn't hear, then walked away. Monday, Liam didn't want to go to school. "She's there," he said simply. "Who?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "The copy." He looked at me with wide, innocent eyes. "She's the me, but not me." "What does that mean?" "She draws like me, talks like me, but she doesn't blink right." "Liam, have you seen her?" He nodded. "Where?" "On the playground. She was wearing my backup hoodie, the red one. I had packed that hoodie in his locker last week. No one else should have known about it. I pulled him from school, took a leave from work, started sleeping in shifts, 3 hours on, 3 off. Bought a second phone, unlisted, got a P.O. box. I stopped posting online. Took down Liam's photos. I became a ghost, but she still found us. One night I heard Liam talking in the living room. He wasn't allowed up that late. I rushed out, heart pounding. He was sitting cross-legged in front of the TV, which was off. The screen was black. "Who are you talking to?" I asked. He looked up. She said, "We're almost ready." "Who did?" He pointed to the screen. Reflected in the black TV was a shape behind me. I spun around. Nothing. But the cold in that room stayed with me for hours. I called a contact from college, a professor who now worked in behavioral sciences. I told him part of the story, left out the supernatural elements. He listened carefully. "Sounds like someone is mirroring your family," he said. "Like a deep impersonation, psychological mimicry. It happens with stalkers sometimes." "But she knows everything," I said. "She's not just pretending, she is." He paused. "You ever hear of a phenomenon called the tulpa?" I hadn't. "It's a thought form," he said. "A manifestation. The idea that with enough belief, repetition, energy, something unreal can become real." I didn't want to believe him, but I did, because it made more sense than coincidence. We moved again. New town, different coast. I changed my name. Homeschooled Liam. No phones, no internet. For a while it worked, until last week. Liam went to the park while I waited nearby. When I turned my back for 30 seconds, he was gone. I ran, screamed, called the police. 30 minutes later, I found him. He was standing calmly near the fountain, holding a red hoodie. The copy gave it back. He said, "It's been 3 days. Every night, at exactly 2:13 a.m., my doorbell rings. The camera feed shows nothing, but I can hear breathing through the speaker. It's my voice, not close, not perfect, but almost. I don't know what she wants anymore. Maybe she wants to replace me, or maybe she already has. Because this morning, Liam asked me something. 'Daddy?' 'Yeah, bud.' His face was blank, his voice calm. 'Why do you keep calling me Liam?' he asked. 'My name is Lucas.'" The man in the old class photo that no one remembers. I'm not someone who scares easily. After over a decade working in archival restoration, scanning, repairing old photographs, I've seen my share of strange images, damaged negatives, blurred faces, partial burns. I've worked with crime scene photos, war zone archives, even old funeral portraits. But only one photo has ever made me sleep with the lights on, and I'm not a superstitious man. It arrived last March, part of a bulk project from Allenwood High, school in Pennsylvania, a school I'd never heard of before. They were preparing for their 75th anniversary. Ruth Gerhardt, a retired teacher, had mailed us several boxes of old yearbooks and loose class photos to be digitized and organized. I was assigned 10 yearbooks, each covering one academic year. The process was simple: scan, clean up, label, and pass the files along to the design team. Everything was fine, until I got to the class of 1982-1983. The last photo in the album, Class 12B, is where things went wrong. It was an outdoor shot in front of a familiar red brick wall. Lighting was good. 23 students stood in neat rows dressed in standard 80s attire, white shirts, grey slacks or pleated skirts. A female teacher stood on the far right holding a clipboard, and at the very edge of the back row on the far left was him. I don't know what else to call him, but the man. An adult male standing awkwardly among teenagers. He wore a black suit buttoned to the neck. His eyes were wide, vacant, and deeply unsettling. He wasn't smiling, wasn't posing, just standing there. At first I assumed he was another teacher, but the caption listed only one staff member, June. McCleary. No one else was mentioned, and the handwritten note on the back of the photo read, Class 12B, 23 students. Homeroom teacher, June McCleary. 23 students, not 24. I counted again and again. 22 teens, one teacher, and this man. 24 people total. I checked the other class photos from that year. No sign of him, not even in the background. Just this one picture, Class 12B. I zoomed in on his face. The image quality wasn't great, but something about it was wrong. His features were somehow too clear, crisper than the others, as if he hadn't been there when the photo was taken, as if he'd been inserted afterward, but no signs of tampering. I made a note in the project file. Unidentified adult male present in photo. Verification needed. Then I sent it to our contacts. A week later, I got an email from Ruth Gerhardt. Hi Mason, I saw the scan of Class 12B you sent. I wasn't their homeroom teacher, but I taught some of those kids. I can say with certainty, that man was not there when the photo was taken. Can you send me the original? I double-checked the original scan. He was still there. No signs of editing. I even examined it with a magnifying glass. Nothing suggested it was altered. I mailed Ruth the physical copy. I also asked her to check the back for any hidden notes. 2 days later, she called. Her voice trembled. Mason, I don't know how to explain this. I remember that day. It was cloudy, almost raining. One of the kids had a flat tire, so they were late. But there was no man there. Absolutely none. I believe you, I said. Do you remember any students from that class going missing? Any strange incidents? A pause. There was Robbie Kelman. He disappeared about a year after graduation. Vanished, really. Police called it a runaway case, but his parents never believed that. I couldn't let it go. Something compelled me to dig deeper. I accessed the school's old digital archives. Luckily, some yearbooks had been scanned years ago. I found Class 12B's roster, 23 names, none matching the man's face. I checked their individual yearbook. Photos. Everyone had one, except Robbie Kelman. No senior portrait. No other photo. Just the group shot. I tracked down Robbie's old home address. It had long been sold, but through social media, I found Margaret Kelman, his sister. She now lived in Pittsburgh. I messaged her. She didn't respond at first, then agreed to meet. We sat in a small cafe near downtown. Margaret was in her 50s, tired eyes, worn face. I opened my laptop and showed her the group photo. She stared at it, then recoiled. That man, she whispered. God, that man, you recognize him? Not exactly, but I saw him once, right before Robbie vanished. My heart pounded. It was late '84, she said. Robbie used to stay up drawing. One night I passed his room and found him frozen, just staring out the window. He wouldn't answer me at first. Then he said, "He's back, the man at the power pole." The man? Tall, wearing black, head tilted, never moved, just stood there. Robbie said he came every night exactly at 2:13 a.m., stayed for an hour, then vanished. I shivered. We thought Robbie was hallucinating, but he swore he wasn't. Then one night, he was gone. The door was unlocked. No note, no sign of a break-in. Police called it voluntary, but he didn't take anything, not even his wallet. He just vanished. That night, I started dreaming about the man. At first, just flashes. Him in the background of photos I'd scanned weeks ago. Then he began appearing in images I was sure I'd already finished. Pictures I'd archived. Pictures he had never been in before. A 1979 graduation photo. He stood beside the principal's podium. A 1985 basketball team photo. His face half hidden. Behind the stage curtain, I went back through old folders. He was showing up more and more, always in black, always slightly out of place, always tilting his head, and no one remembered him. I showed one to my girlfriend. "Who's that guy in the back?" I texted. She called me immediately. "That old man in black? Did you Photoshop that? That's creepy as hell." She saw him. I wasn't crazy. That night, at exactly 2:13 a.m., I woke up to a knock. I live alone. 3rd floor apartment. No one can reach my window. I turned on the lights and checked the door. No one. I went back to bed. The kitchen light flickered, then died. I didn't sleep. Next morning, I called in sick. I sent all the photos with the man to a digital forensic expert, Mike, a former FBI contractor. I need to know if these were tampered with. Anything, even microscopic. 3 days later, Mike called. "Are you messing with me?" he said, half laughing. "No. These haven't been altered. Not digitally, anyway. But there's something weirder." I waited. The lighting on the guy doesn't match the rest of the photo. In every image, shadows fall one way, but he's lit from a different angle, as if he's separate, like he was photographed under a different sun. I said nothing. I ran spectral analysis. The noise patterns in his portion of the image don't match the rest. He's on a different layer, Mason. Literally. I drove to Allenwood. The school closed in 2007. Now it's a storage facility. I got permission to enter under the pretense of filming a documentary. I walked to the brick wall where Class 12B's photo had been taken. Same wall, same mold creeping up the cracks. I snapped pictures. He wasn't there. I turned to leave and noticed something carved into the bricks. A deep scuff, like a footprint, enormous and singular. I touched it, ice cold. That night I stayed at a motel. He found me anyway. 13 a.m. A knock 3 times. Slow, deliberate. I opened my phone, hit record, opened the door slightly. No one. But the video, clear as day, captured a silhouette at the end of the hallway. Tall, still, head tilted. I fled the motel at 2:30 a.m., left everything behind, moved to Oregon, changed numbers, got a new job, but he still followed. I don't know who, what he is. A ghost? A memory? Something older? All I know is this. If you ever see him in a photo, don't ask anyone else if they see him too, because if no one remembers, it means he's about to remember you. The street light in front of my house flickers every time I look outside. My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 35 years old, a software engineer who works remotely for a tech company based in Seattle. I used to live in a 2-bedroom apartment in the heart of the city, where car horns were my morning soundtrack and neighbors' arguments were the lullaby at night. But that was before I decided to walk away from everything. 3 months after breaking up with the woman I had spent 7 years with, I realized I was completely drained, not just from her, but from the life we'd tried to build together. That apartment, that couch, that kitchen, every inch held ghosts of repetitive conversations, glances devoid of affection, and the deadly silence during dinner. I didn't want a fresh start in the same old place. I wanted to disappear. I chose Charleston, South Carolina, almost by accident. One sleepless night, scrolling through Zillow listings, I saw a mid-century house in Lakefield, a quiet suburb about 30 minutes from downtown Charleston. Red brick, low roof, a front yard, an old oak tree leaning over the path. Large living room, big windows, tons of natural light. The asking price was almost 30% below market value. Too good to be true. I clicked contact agent just out of curiosity. The next morning, I got a call from a man named Mark. "You're the first one to ask about this property," he said with a southern drawl. "The previous owner had to move into assisted living. No legal issues. Clean paperwork." "Why is it priced so low?" I asked. "We like to say it just needs the right buyer. No one's lived there long term in recent years. Folks came and went. Anyone die in the house?" I joked. Mark chuckled. "Not that I know of, but I didn't check the death records." A week later, I flew to Charleston. From the outside, the house looked perfectly forgettable. Nothing flashy, nothing off. Big picture window on the right, sloped roof, slightly faded cream paint. The neighborhood was quiet, not too far from the main road, but just isolated enough that you couldn't hear traffic. Inside, it felt like another era. Original wood cabinets, 70s wallpaper, maple floors with faint scratches like old cat marks. Not modern, but cozy and clean. As I stepped into the living room, I found myself frozen in front of the picture window. From there you could clearly see the front lawn and the tall street lamp planted right on the sidewalk. "It comes on automatically every night," Mark said, noticing my gaze. "Part of the city grid, no manual switch." I nodded. I didn't understand why, but I felt a chill. It was just a street light. The deal went through faster than expected. 3 weeks later, I had the keys in hand. The paperwork was finalized. I hired a moving service for the big stuff and brought my gear, computers, books, sensitive equipment, myself. I have a habit of checking every outlet, water filter, and internet connection before staying overnight. The house checked out. Old wiring, but stable. Clean water, no strange smells. Everything was too perfect. That first night, I pulled the curtains in the living room, opened a beer, and set my laptop on my lap. Outside, I heard crickets chirping, the wind brushing against the eaves. No honking, no people shouting. For the first time in years, I could hear myself breathe. That night, just before bed, I walked through the living room to turn off the lights. As I passed the window, I looked outside. Just a habit. The street lamp glowed white. Its light spread evenly across the lawn. A thought crept into my head, something ridiculous. The image of someone standing under that light. Still, silent. There, face lit from below as they stared up at my window. I chuckled at myself, blaming too many horror movies. Then I turned off the light and went to bed. What I didn't know was that from that moment on, something out there had started looking back at me. I'm a creature of habit. Even living alone, I set my alarm for 7 a.m. every morning, hand brew my coffee, check my email at exactly 7:30, and start work at 8 WANs. The new house didn't disrupt that routine. In fact, it reinforced it. No honking, no footsteps from upstairs neighbors. Just birdsong, dry leaves tapping the porch, and the soft sound of keystrokes in the room I'd chosen for my office. I worked at a desk beside a window looking out to the backyard. There was a small pine tree and a weathered silver shed. Each morning, sunlight filtered across the floor at a slightly different angle, like a crude sundial. It gave me a strange sense of reassurance. As long as the light still came on schedule, I felt like things were under control. Each afternoon, I made a habit of cleaning. The living room, kitchen, bathroom, everything stayed spotless and orderly. I bought a few potted plants, installed a new water filter, replaced the old bulbs with LEDs. I used a whiteboard in the hallway to keep track of tasks. Buy toaster oven, call internet technician, mow lawn. Every checked box brought a small spark of satisfaction. Some nights I sat on the living room couch reading a book, light jazz, humming through my Bluetooth speaker. I felt like I'd won something. No one yelling, no texts I had to answer. Every second belonged to me. The neighborhood wasn't large, but I quickly learned who lived nearby. Mr. Thomas lived directly to the left, an older man, probably in his 70s, with stark white hair. He often watered his plants in the morning. I'd waved once. He nodded silently and retreated inside. Every time I stepped into my yard, I could sense him watching from behind. The curtains, not overtly, but just enough to make me aware of it. To the right was the Robbins family, a young couple with 2 small children. They were friendly. They invited me over for a Sunday barbecue. I declined politely, citing unpacking, and they didn't press. Their oldest boy, about 6, liked to ride his bike across my lawn, flashing a guilty grin. I didn't mind. Kids' laughter, even when loud, was a welcome sound compared to adult complaints. 3 houses up the street stood an abandoned home. The roof sagged, the front door boarded up with wooden planks. Weeds grew waist-high across the yard. No "for sale" sign, no mention of it from anyone. It sat there like a torn patch in the fabric of the neighborhood. One evening I asked Mark, the realtor, about it. "Oh, number 408, he said, pausing. "Been empty about 5 years now. Owner passed away suddenly. No next of kin. Properties in limbo. Has anyone ever lived there since? Few tenants, short term, never stayed long. I didn't ask for more." But from that day on, every time I passed it, even in broad daylight, I felt a chill on the back of my neck. On the 10th day after moving in, I noticed the street lamp for the first time. Nothing strange about it then. I had just stood up after work, stretching, and walked past the living room window. The lamp's glow spilled onto the lawn, a warm white-yellow beam. I squinted slightly. I don't know why, but in that instant, I felt like the light was watching me. I stepped back. The glow didn't change. I stepped forward again. Nothing different. I laughed at myself, told myself I'd spent too much time indoors and needed fresh air. That night I took a walk around the block with a mug of coffee. I passed beneath the street lamp. It glowed steadily, no flicker, no buzz, just a lamp, quiet, unremarkable, like every other one on the street. That's what I thought, until a few nights later, when it started to blink. The first time I noticed something strange was on a Wednesday night, around 9:30. I had just closed my laptop, heading to the kitchen for a drink, when I walked past the living room, curtains open, as usual, as my eyes unconsciously drifted toward the large window. I saw the streetlight flicker, not a full on and off blink, but a dim, shivering kind of flicker, like someone was gently turning a dimmer switch on a stage light. I froze, stared straight out the window. The light looked normal. Again, I blinked. Maybe I was tired. Maybe my eyes were strained from staring at screens all day. I kept walking. Another flicker. This time, more clearly. I turned back, stared longer, more intently. The poles stood still, no movement. The light cast evenly on the lawn. Nothing unusual now. Stepped back a little. Another flicker. That was when I started to feel like something was off. I decided to run a simple test. I grabbed my phone, turned on the camera, and set it to video mode. Standing in front of the window, I began recording. I watched the scene through my screen. Everything looked fine. The light stayed steady. I lowered the phone and looked directly, with my eyes. Flicker. I raised the phone again. The light held steady. I kept watching. Again. The light dimmed, then brightened, almost like breathing. I played the footage back. Completely normal. Nothing had changed on the video. This unsettled me more than anything else. It couldn't be recorded. Only I could see it. I started paying more attention over the next few nights. I recorded the times when it happened, the hour, the minute, and my position, near the window, walking past, or just glancing. After 3 days of notes, I noticed a disturbing pattern. The light only flickered when I looked at it. Not every time, but often enough to feel unnatural. I sat on the couch in the dark for 15 minutes, staring outside. One flicker. I got up, walked into the kitchen, came back, glanced toward the window. Another flicker. I told no one. I didn't even search it online. I didn't want a digital trail of something like streetlight blinks when I look at it. I was afraid if I named the phenomenon, it might hear me. On the 6th night, I tried a little experiment. I stood 3 meters from the window, using my phone's front-facing camera to look at the streetlight behind me through the screen. Still saw the flicker, but when I turned the camera over my shoulder to film it directly, the light held steady again. It was like the flickering only existed in my direct line of sight, not through devices, not through mirrors. This wasn't just a physical glitch. It was acting like something responding to my gaze. I taped dark paper over the window the next day, not because I was scared, or so I told myself, but to eliminate suggestion. If I couldn't see the light, maybe I'd stop imagining it. Maybe it was just stress. I went about my Sunday as usual. Until that evening, walking past the living room, I unconsciously turned toward where the window used to be. I still saw flickering through a tiny crack in the tape I hadn't sealed properly, I froze for several seconds, then stepped forward and sealed the edge with more tape. The light continued to flicker, even though I could no longer see it. And then, in the dead silence of the dark room, I heard a faint electric hiss. The kind you hear when a bulb is about to blow. Just for a second, but enough to know I wasn't imagining things. The streetlight was trying to talk to me. I began to make a plan. If this phenomenon only occurred when I looked at it with my own eyes, then it meant it depended on my attention, not on space or time. That thought chilled me, but it also made me want to understand it. I'm not superstitious, but I believe in observation. And right now, observation was the only tool I had left. That night, I set up my phone on a tripod, shooting in time-lapse mode from different angles. The living room, the kitchen window, behind slightly drawn curtains. I turned off all the lights. Inside the house, keeping only my laptop screen on to avoid interference. After more than an hour of recording, nothing. The streetlight glowed steadily. No flicker, no variation. I rewound the footage. Still the same, so normal it felt suspicious. Felt like I was tracking a creature that knew how to play hide and seek, only showing itself when I let my guard down. I shifted tactics. I used a mirror, a large tabletop one, positioning it so I could see the streetlight's reflection from the couch. Same result, only when I looked directly, not through a device or reflective surface, did the light flicker. I tried standing. A few steps away from the window, eyes shut, then opening them abruptly, a flicker. But if I opened them slowly, or was distracted and only glanced by accident, nothing. I wrote in my notebook, responds to intensity of attention. One night, I grabbed a powerful flashlight and blinked it through the window in a sequence. 3 quick flashes, 2 slow. A random Morse code pattern I made up. I wasn't expecting anything. But 3 seconds after I stopped, the streetlight blinked 3 times, then twice. My heart pounded so hard I had to grip the table. I tried again. 1 blink, then 3. The light responded exactly. I tried 1 more time. 5 rapid blinks. It answered. Perfectly. I didn't sleep that night. I turned on every light in the house, played loud music. I felt like I'd just initiated a conversation I didn't understand. The language for part of me was thrilled, like a scientist discovering a new life form. But another part, the quiet one, deep in my mind, wanted to pack a bag and leave that night. I didn't. I needed to know more. I called Jack, my best friend, since college, now an electrical engineer for a maintenance firm. If anyone could explain this rationally, it was Jack. "You're probably getting a reflection," Jack said over the phone. "Could be a car's headlights bouncing off your window and making the light look like it's flickering. I'm on a cul-de-sac. No cars drive by at that hour. Voltage fluctuation, maybe. I measured it. Stable," Jack sighed. "I know you're thorough, Ethan, but if you're really worried, I can come take a look." I didn't say anything else. I just sent him the address. Jack arrived the next night, carrying a handheld voltage tester and a bag of beer. "Just in case," he smiled. We sat in the living room, and I explained everything again. Jack sat where I usually sat. Nothing happened. He walked up to the window. The light stayed steady. I swapped places, standing where I always did. The light blinked 3 times. Jack froze. "What the hell?" he muttered. "See?" I said. "It only does. It with me." Jack looked at me, this time without his usual smirk. "You think someone's controlling it?" "I think something is communicating through it." We spent nearly an hour testing. The light wouldn't flicker for Jack, wouldn't respond to his flashlight. But every time I held the light, even a single flash, the street light echoed it back. It was like it knew who it was talking to. When Jack left, he didn't say much, just mumbled, "You should be careful." I knew he didn't think I was imagining things anymore. Neither did I. I wasn't sure what was real anymore. I had started to doubt my own memory. Like that flickering light was a claw, slow and delicate, scratching at my mind, leaving invisible marks. I tried to hold on to logic, so the first thing I did was call the power company. I didn't mention signals. I didn't say, "The light talks to me." I kept it simple. "The street light in front of my house flickers at night. Can someone check it?" The woman on the line took my address and said a technician would be dispatched. 3 days later, a white utility truck arrived. The worker, a guy named Paul, wore a hard hat and carried measuring equipment and binoculars. I watched him from the window as he climbed the ladder, unscrewed the casing, and checked the control board. I opened the door and offered him a glass of water. He accepted and wiped his forehead. "Nothing unusual," he said. "High-pressure sodium bulb. These things last forever. No blown capacitors or damaged circuits. Everything checks out." "No voltage fluctuation?" I asked. "Steady as a hospital monitor," he smiled. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or unnerved. "You been here long?" Paul asked as he packed up. "About 2 weeks." He nodded. "Someone reported an issue out here a few years back. An older guy said the light acted strange. But when I came out, it was working fine." "Which house was that?" Paul pointed to number 408, the abandoned one. I called Jack again. This time, it wasn't about measurements. "I need you to see it," I said on the phone. "Not with a device, with your eyes." He didn't ask questions. 2 hours later, he showed up with a stronger flashlight, a new voltage meter, and a serious look on his face. "You look like you haven't slept in 2 days, he said as he walked in. "I don't remember the last time I actually did," I replied. We sat in the dark living room, lights off. Only the faint glow of the street light leaked through the curtains. I motioned toward the window. "Watch." Jack turned to face it. A few seconds passed. Nothing. I sighed. "Maybe it's not." The light blinked. A short pulse. Jack flinched. "That was... You saw it?" I stood up, walked a loop around the room, then looked out again. The light blinked twice. "I'm not imagining this." Jack stared at the glass. His face slowly lost color. "I just saw something," he whispered. I turned. "Where?" "In the window. A reflection. But it wasn't you." I looked back. Nothing but my own silhouette and Jack's shadow behind me. "That face," Jack murmured. It pressed against the glass, but it wasn't clear, like a figure made of fog. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. We sat in silence for 10 more minutes. The light didn't blink again, but I knew, and Jack knew, it had chosen to show him just once. Once was enough to erase any doubt. As Jack was leaving, he paused at the door. "Ethan, are you sure you're okay?" "What's okay anymore?" I said, half laughing. "Do you think it's trying to get your attention?" "No, I think it's testing my reaction." Jack didn't reply. Then he stepped closer, put a hand on my shoulder. "If you need to get away for a few days, I don't dare." I looked out the window again. No flicker, nothing. Because if I leave, who'll be watching it? I started logging how many times the light flickered each night. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was compulsion. As if the light was sending a sequence, a code, and if I didn't figure it out, something terrible would happen. At first, it was 3. The next night, 5. Then 9. Then 13. I sat alone in the dark, watching the pole, recording each blink in my notebook. My handwriting got worse every night, like my hands weren't entirely under my control anymore. I used red ink to mark the nights with odd numbers. By night 18, I noticed something that chilled me. This wasn't a countdown like I had assumed. It was a prime number sequence. I tried avoiding the light completely, drew the curtains, taped over gaps, avoided mirrors, but it still flickered. I could see it sneaking through cracks in the doorframe, bouncing off the ceiling, reflecting in a half-full glass of water. Even with my back turned, I could feel it blinking. One night I challenged myself, don't look at the light at all. I closed every door, blindfolded myself, wore headphones, sat on the couch counting seconds. Around the 8-minute mark, I felt the room dim, then brighten, not with household light, but something more, imposing, like someone had pointed a flashlight directly at my closed eyes. I took the blindfold off and instantly regretted it. The light was no longer normal. The street light was pulsating, not physically. The light itself, it contracted and expanded, rippling like a living thing breathing. I stared in horror as it twisted into a spiral, then burst outward in jagged rays, crashing silently against the window like flashes of red static. I jumped back, knocking over the chair, heart pounding. But when I opened the curtain again, the light was normal, steady, yellow, still. I began doubting my eyes, my brain. I checked my pupils, normal. I tried filming it with infrared, nothing unusual, but every time I looked, every time I counted, it gave me a new number. Night 23, 17 blinks. Night 24, 19. Night 25, 23. I googled the sequence, confirmed all primes. I tried not counting. The flickers turned erratic, no pattern. And then I had a terrifying thought. What if counting was the only thing keeping it contained? If I stopped, would it break free from the pattern? I put a chart on the wall, columns for date, time, blink count, and mental state. The more I counted, the more I felt myself slipping out of normal thinking. I couldn't remember what day it was, but I knew. Night 27, 29, blinks. Night 28, 31. Night 29, 37. The numbers grew, and as they did, I grew more exhausted. It was like each blink drained part of me, not physically, but consciously. I decided to stare without blinking. I wanted to know, what happens if I challenge the light? Minute 3, short flicker. I didn't blink. Minute 5, the glow stretched, melting like wax. Minute 8, I saw shadows. Standing between me and the lamp, there was no one really out there. But in that glow, like an overexposed photograph, I saw figures, tall, thin, standing in a row, motionless. I couldn't see their faces, but I knew they were looking back at me. I blinked. They vanished. The light went back to normal. I collapsed to the floor. Since then, I never stare for more than 5 minutes, and every night I have to count, because now I'm certain of one thing. If I stop counting, something will step out of that light. I never thought I'd be afraid of a video I recorded myself. That night, I tried one last experiment. No mirrors, no reflections. I placed my phone directly facing the window, rear camera, 60 FPS, highest resolution. I let it record for 15 minutes. No lights, no background noise. I sat a few feet away, notebook in hand, eyes fixed on the light outside, trying not to think. Afterwards, I plugged the phone into my computer and played it back slowly, frame by frame. Minute 8, nothing. Minute 9, still normal. Minute 13, second 11, I saw it. A face, pressed against the glass on the right edge of the frame. No movement leading up to it, no shadows approaching from a distance. It just appeared, as if it had always been there, only now choosing to reveal itself. Pale skin, blotched with black like mild burns. A crooked smile, not joyful, but twisted, off-center, unnatural, and the eyes completely black. No whites, no reflections, just two voids, like someone had burned holes through a mask. I don't remember dropping the phone, but the sound of it hitting the floor snapped me out of it so hard I nearly screamed. I turned on every light in the house, checked every lock, every window. There was no one in the yard, no one at the window, no footprints, no noise. But I knew I had seen it. I reviewed the footage. Same timestamp, 01:13:11. I rewound, played again. The face was still there, clear, sharp, unmistakable. But on the 10th replay, it wasn't in the same spot. It was closer, just a little, but undeniably. I thought I was imagining it. I took screenshots, compared pixels. Conclusion, not a hallucination. It was approaching, not in the video, but with each time I looked, it moved closer. I slammed the laptop shut. Didn't dare look again. I didn't sleep that night. I kept every light in the house on. Slept with a kitchen knife under my pillow. I tried to read, listen to music, watch movies. Nothing helped. Something was inside. I didn't hear footsteps. No doors opened, but I felt it, as clearly as breath on my neck. Once I walked past the bathroom and saw the mirror fogged up, even though no one had showered. Another time, the hallway light blinked once, then returned to normal. Every time I turned around quickly, nothing was there. But when I stood still long enough, I heard breathing, and it wasn't mine. I opened my computer one last time, but the video was gone. The file was corrupted. Wouldn't play, no thumbnail. Couldn't delete it, couldn't copy. Only a strange error message appeared. Access denied. File in use by another process. I wasn't running anything. No background programs. I shut the laptop down, but just. Before the screen went black, for a split second, I saw my desktop wallpaper had changed. No longer the nature photo I'd always used. It was a dull grey image with a single black speck in the lower right corner. I zoomed in. That speck was an eye, just one eye, staring straight at me. I understood then. From the moment I looked into that light, it had looked back. And now, it didn't need the lamp anymore. It had found a way into my house, and worse. It knew I was afraid. I realized I couldn't keep sitting still. If that thing wanted my attention, then it was time I gave it back. I needed to know, where did that streetlight come from? Who put it there? Had anyone else seen what I had? The next morning, I drove to the Charleston town office, Public Works Records Division. A middle-aged man named Gary helped me. He had a tired voice and the kind of hair that had long surrendered to brushes. I need to look up information on the streetlight on Weatherby Avenue, in front of house number 4 and 12, I said. Gary raised an eyebrow. That pole's real old. Think it's been there since I was a kid. He sifted through yellowed papers that smelled like mold and time. Model 7B installed in 1964, he read. Local contractor, no listed name. Tapped into residential power grid. Last maintenance, 1997. Bulb replacement. Nothing since. Any reports of strange activity? Gary glanced up. Not mockingly, just curious. You're the third person. In 40 years to ask about that pole. I looked up. Who were the others? A woman in 1983, then an old man from 408 around 2012. Both asked about the missing children. My grip tightened. Children? Gary nodded. 1967, 2 boys went missing while playing near that streetlight. No evidence, no witnesses, no suspects. Case closed in 1970. I requested copies of the records. My hand shook slightly as I signed the receipt. Form. That afternoon, I visited Mr. Thomas, the elderly neighbor next door. I brought a box of cookies as a peace offering, about the only way he'd open his door. "How long have you lived here?" I asked as we sat on his rickety porch chairs. "Since '71, he said, pouring tea without meeting my eyes. "Do you know anything about the street light in front of my house?" Mr. Thomas fell silent for a long time. "The man who lived in your house before you, his name was Walter Dean," he said slowly. "Good man, polite, but he had strange habits." "What kind of habits?" "He only slept during the day. At night, he kept his windows covered. Never sat in the living room after 7. "Why?" I asked him once. He just said, "That light out there ain't meant for human eyes." I shivered. Once I saw him standing in the yard at dawn, holding a mirror, face pale as paper. I asked if he was okay. He just said, "It's gone now." That night, I opened the file Gary had given me again, a scanned newspaper clipping from 1967. 2 boys ages 6 and 9 disappear while playing near a streetlight. No signs of abduction. No cameras. The incident sent Weatherby neighborhood into panic. I stared at the grainy black and white photo. One of the boys was standing right next to the streetlight in front of my house. I couldn't mistake it. The rust streaks, the crooked weld line, the slightly tilted metal cap. I brought the photo closer, heart pounding. In the shadow behind the child, there was a faint shape, tall, narrow, like the elongated shadow of someone leaning forward. The article didn't mention it, but I saw it, and I knew it never left. It was just waiting for someone to look at it long enough. The light began appearing where it had no business being, no longer limited to the living room window, no longer needing direct eye contact. Now I saw it, or what represented it, in reflections. The first time was on the TV screen when it was off. I walked past the living room around midnight to get a drink. The TV, dark and dust-covered, faintly mirrored the streetlight from outside. I caught a flicker, 3 short blinks, 1 long. I turned to the window. Nothing. The light outside stayed steady. I looked back at the TV. It was still flickering. I stood there, frozen, heart racing. It wasn't a physical light. It didn't bounce off walls or illuminate anything else. It only existed in the reflection. Then came the bathroom mirror. I had just turned off the light and glanced up and saw the glow behind me blink once. I turned around. Complete darkness. Looked back at the mirror. The light remained, pulsing, slightly off rhythm. Not quite Morse code, something more erratic. I tried to record it, filmed the mirror with my phone, but the video showed only darkness and my face. No light, no flicker. It only appeared when I looked with my own eyes, like the early days with the street light, but now it no longer needed direct sight, just reflected attention. I became obsessed with every surface in the house. Laptop screens, the microwave door, the stainless steel fridge. They all became potential windows. I covered every mirror with sheets, taped paper over the TV, turned my laptop upside down, put my phone in a drawer, but I couldn't escape the car windshield. One night, I went out to grab a charger from the back seat. The streetlight in front of the house was steady, normal. I opened the door, leaned inside, glanced up through the windshield, and I saw myself. Not a direct reflection. The angle was wrong, but I saw me, standing under the streetlight, motionless, wearing different clothes, dark jacket, tilted head like the neck was broken, and a grin, that same unnatural grin from the corrupted video. I yanked myself out of the car, slammed the door, ran around. To check, no one was there, just me, and the pole and my shadow. leaning in the wrong direction for how the light should fall. I don't know what it wants, but I know this. It's using my image to move closer. No more flickers, no more hiding. Now, it stands in my place, waiting for someone to mistake it for me, or worse, waiting for me to step out and forget I was ever myself. I couldn't sleep anymore. Sleep had become a distant concept, something blurry like morning light after staring too long into darkness. I tried lying down, tried closing my eyes, but I'd still see that light, sneaking through every curtain, seam, every socket edge, every microscopic crack in the walls. I started hearing the flickering in my head, not like electricity, more like thoughts being cut, as if someone snapped their fingers every time I was about to remember something important. Every night I sat in the living room, kitchen knife in hand, afraid to blink too long. At first, the knife was for self-defense, but soon I held it because I wasn't sure I'd still be myself by morning. I began to notice something strange. Every time the light outside flickered, something inside my house moved slightly, just a little, barely enough to notice, unless you knew that chair had been 2 Seinfertas to the left, not the right. The chandelier started swaying gently with each flash. No wind, no tremor. It was like space was resetting itself. A family photo I kept on the wall, one from my childhood, began to tilt. I fixed it. The next night it was crooked again, in the opposite direction. I mounted a level and a camera on the wall. Each time the light flickered, the camera captured the wall flexing slightly. Not an illusion, not structural error. My house was stretching and compressing with the light. I measured distances, couch to table, table leg to window. I logged it all like a physicist mapping a dimensional anomaly. And I discovered the ratios of objects in the house were changing every night, not by much, but consistently. The room grew wider, chairs grew shorter. My laptop screen stretched a little sideways. This wasn't light anymore. It was a force that was reshaping my world, millimeter by millimeter. I called Jack. Line busy. Knocked on Mr. Thomas's door. No answer. I went online. Forums on anomalous light. Spiritual unidentified phenomena. Nonsense keywords. No one knew. No one believed. I was completely alone. I sealed every curtain, taped foil over the windows, barricaded the doors with furniture. Still, the light found its way in through floorboard gaps, through the edge of a dead bulb, through my eyes. I looked into the mirror and saw light flicker from within my pupils. I saw my reflection twitch slightly each time the streetlight flashed, and I wasn't sure. Did the person in the mirror blink at the same time I did? I broke down. I screamed into empty space. I threw chairs, smashed glass, called my own name out loud, over and over, just to hear something familiar. But deep down, I knew I wasn't in control anymore. This house, that lamp, the light they had established, new rules, and I, the last one awake each night, counting every flash, clutching a knife with trembling hands, was now just a variable in their experiment. I don't remember the exact moment I decided to leave. Maybe it was when the reflection in the bathroom mirror blinked 1 beat ahead of me. Maybe it was when the front door opened at 3:17 a.m., despite 2 locks and a chair wedged against it. Maybe it was when the eye on my laptop wallpaper vanished, and I felt it behind me instead. I packed in silence, like a thief stealing from his own life. Only the essentials: laptop, clothes, the notebook, that old kitchen knife. I drove through the night, no music, no red lights. I booked a room at a small roadside motel 40 miles north of Charleston. 3 vacant rooms, No obvious sign. No one asked my name. The room had 2 dim yellow bulbs, an old CRT TV that didn't work, and a window facing nothing. Just empty land. I thought, this is it. No more streetlight, no more blinking, no more signal. I was wrong. The first night I tried to sleep early, lights on, curtains sealed tight. At 1:23 a.m., I woke to a flash across my eyelids. I sat up straight, heart racing, scanning the room. Nothing was out of place. I crept to the window, peeled the curtain back. Pitch black outside, no lamppost, no moon, just silent darkness. I almost exhaled until my eyes adjusted, and I saw a faint blinking light floating in mid-air. Not a lamp. It cast no glow. Just a strip of light suspended in space, pulsing slowly, in the same familiar rhythm. I rushed outside, running into the empty lot. Nothing. No poles, no equipment, no people. But I looked up, and the light was still there, hovering like a glowing mist between the tree lines. I backed away, slammed the door, stumbled inside like I was escaping a nameless thing. The next morning, I switched rooms, one on the opposite side, facing away. I barricaded the door, taped the curtains shut. I avoided the window completely. I turned on the TV, not expecting much, just static, until I noticed in the static a blinking pattern emerging. 3, 5, 7, 11. It had followed me into electronics. I unplugged the TV, everything. I scribbled into my notebook. I won't look. I won't listen. I won't count. But my hand kept writing numbers, like my body no longer answered to me. Each morning I'd wake to new sequences scrawled on the bed frame, the door, the palm of my hand. I understood then. It wasn't that. It was following me. It was that I had brought it with me, not through my eyes, but because I had looked too long. Now, no matter where I go, the light appears because it doesn't need a place. It needs attention. And by running, I've only confirmed one truth. I can no longer stop thinking about it. On the 4th night at the motel, I left the nightlight on, not because I feared the dark anymore, but because I feared the moment the light stopped belonging to me. I drifted off around 1:30 a.m., exhausted after nearly a week of living like a feral thing in human skin, and I was jolted awake by a soft click. The old TV had turned itself on. I hadn't touched the remote. No timer. No active outlet connection. Yet the CRT screen glowed pale blue, as if it had been waiting for me to look. The time, 2:13 a.m., exactly the moment the streetlight outside my old house used to start blinking every night. I approached it, eyes burning from lack of sleep, and stared at the screen. At first it was just static, flickering like a blizzard in a snow globe. But then, among the flickering grey specks, an image emerged, a streetlight. Not a random one, not a trick of the mind. It was my streetlight, the rusted streak along the pole, the familiar tilt of the bulb, and it was blinking 3 times. Pause. 5, 7. Still the same prime number sequence burned into my brain like a liturgy. I shuddered and turned away from the TV. But I knew. I could feel it. It had found me again. I stepped slowly toward the window, ripping down the curtain I had taped shut. Outside was the same empty lot. I had been certain there was nothing. But now, a single streetlight stood there, lone and crooked, in the dark. No cables, no foundation, just a bare steel post sprouting from the dirt like a monstrous mushroom, and it was blinking, slow, deliberate, perfect rhythm. I stumbled backward. I had left that place. I had fled far, but somehow, through a logic beyond human, it had moved with me. No body, no vehicle. It only needed me to see, only needed me to understand the signal. I turned back to the TV. The streetlight was gone now. Instead, a top-down view of my motel room appeared, black and white, grainy like an old security cam. And I saw myself standing at the window, staring out, motionless, frozen in time. And behind me, in the shadowed corner near the bed, something was approaching. I screamed, yanked the TV plug, threw it to the floor. The full screen went dark, but I knew it didn't matter anymore. It didn't need the TV. It was already in the room. I knew I needed help, but not the kind you call the police or a doctor for. I needed someone who had seen things like this. After hours combing dark forums, deleted posts, flagged threads labeled fiction, I kept seeing one name, Mara. Juno, a woman who once worked with a radio anomaly monitoring agency, later quitting to research non-source light phenomena. I sent her a message, included old videos, my hand-sketched signal diagrams. She called back in under 12 hours. Mara's voice was calm, clear, no panic. She spoke like someone who'd lived next to the edge of the unnatural for a while. I encountered something similar in Nebraska 2016, she said. A man was haunted by a flickering pattern coming from an old neon sign. No one believed him. But after 3 months, every reflective surface around him started showing the same image. What image? I asked. A streetlight. My heart jumped. Not a physical object, Mara continued. An idea. A sentient pattern of light. We met at an abandoned gas station. I half expected a trap. But Mara arrived with the opposite energy to mine. Steady, clear-eyed, carrying a bag of signal readers and a convex mirror strapped to her chest like armor. She looked at me once, nodded, then said plainly, "You're past the early stage. The light has responded to you. I left the house. I shut everything off. It doesn't matter. Once it knows you see it, it never stops watching you." I asked her, "So what do I do?" "There are 2 options," Mara said. "Accept it or resist it." What does acceptance mean? Don't look, don't react, don't acknowledge, let it fade. But that takes something you don't have much of. Time and emotional numbness. I swallowed. And resistance? She opened her backpack and pulled out a mirror-like device, wired with sensors. We call this the feedback mirror. It reflects light back at reversed frequency, makes it see itself. Some believe these patterns can't stand their own reflection. And if it can, Mara looked at me, hesitating for the first time, then at least you'll finally see what's watching you. No more shadows. We left the station as the sun went down. I returned to the motel, feedback mirror in hand, and one question circling my head. Do I really want to see its face? Because if that light is it, then the only thing keeping me intact is not knowing. But I knew. Whatever I chose, one truth remained. It would keep watching until I stop or disappear. I didn't sleep another night after meeting Mara. The next morning I drove back to the old house. No announcement, no clear plan. Just an instinct, like the itch in your brain when you know you've forgotten something behind you. I brought gasoline, a lighter, and the feedback mirror. House 412 stood silent among the neighborhood like a forgotten relic. Grass waist-high, mailbox cracked. No one had lived here since I left, but the streetlight was still there. No dust, no spider webs, no signs of time. The bulb was intact, glowing steady, and as I stepped out of the car, it flickered. 3, 5, 7, slow, like a welcome. I doused the base in gasoline, soaked the dry weeds. I stepped back, lit the flame. It roared to life, violent, thick with the stench of burning chemicals. Paint peeled. Smoke billowed, but the pole didn't change color. I stepped closer, my face flushed with heat, and touched the metal. It was cold as ice, so cold I jerked my hand back immediately. I dropped to my knees, vision blurred by smoke. But in the blur, I saw something impossible. A figure stood inside the light, not in the fire, not a reflection, inside the center of the glow. A man wearing exactly what I was wearing, standing straight, expressionless, no shadow, no reflection. It was me. I stumbled, back, hitting the fence. The light flickered still, but now the glow didn't radiate. It pulled inward, and I heard a voice, not through ears, but in my spine. It doesn't live in the light. It is the light. I understood. I couldn't burn it, couldn't break it, because it was never an object. It was a behavior of light, a way space rearranges itself when watched too long. I looked at the feedback mirror, the glass warped slightly, trembling with each pulse. It reflected nothing, because this thing had no form to reflect. It didn't need to exist. It only needed to be perceived. And I, the one who had watched it too long, had now become part of that light. I don't remember leaving, only that when I woke, I was driving north, with frost-bitten fingers and a hollowed mind. The rearview mirror was foggy, and, in the daylight glow, I swear I saw myself, still standing beneath the streetlight. I didn't run anymore. No more motels, no more escaping, no more crouching in dark corners with a kitchen knife and drawn curtains. I returned to the old house, partly because I knew escape was futile, partly because I was too tired to keep fearing. I lived in the living room, directly facing the window. I set up a tripod, mounted a 4K camera, rigged an external hard drive to record continuously, 24/7. I thought, if I can't avoid the light, then I would monitor it. I'd track every flicker, every blink, every smallest change. It wouldn't lead. I would be the one watching. The first days felt like reclaiming control. I logged notes, catalogued signals. Each time the light blinked, I cross-referenced frame data, timing, frequency. I ate and slept next to the camera. But after a few weeks, I realized I never looked away from the window anymore. Not once. Even while eating, I turned my head to keep it in view. Even in the bathroom, I streamed the live feed to my phone, propped on the sink. I feared if I blinked, even for a second, it would do something irreversible. I had become dependent. Then one day, I checked the feed and saw something strange. No light, no blink, no flicker, just the pole, silent and unmoving. I panicked, rushed to the window, still the same. And then I realized the light was no longer outside. It was inside my eyes. Every time I blinked, I saw the flash. Every time I thought of it, the blinking appeared in my mind. I understood. I had watched for too long, so long that now I couldn't not watch. The streetlight had been absorbed into my perception. It didn't need to exist physically anymore. I had become an eye for it. With every flicker, I felt objects shift around me. No need to log, no need for cameras. As long as I existed, the light was being seen, and I wasn't sure anymore. Was I living with it, or was it living through me? This story has no ending, only light, blinking, repeating, and me still watching. The light was no longer out on the street. It was inside him.
I'm a horror storyteller, but I never imagined I'd get trapped in one of my own stories. My name is Kwa. I run a small podcast called Things You Shouldn't Hear at 3 a.m. It all started from late-night coffee sessions with friends, where we'd trade bizarre local legends, haunted houses, ghost bridges, that road where cars go in but never come out. Old stuff, cliché even, but hearing it in the dead of night still made your skin crawl. I loved that feeling, the chill, the pull. The more I recorded, the more serious I got. I invested in a good mic, learned how to edit audio, started interviewing locals. A really creepy episode might pull a few thousand listens. Not a lot, but enough to remind me there are others out there who crave the strange like I do. Eventually, I started going to these haunted places myself, recording on location. There's something about capturing the real soundscape. Dry leaves, midnight insects, a distant cricket that no effect pack can replicate. It gave my podcast a different edge. Last week, I decided to go further. It had been too long since a new episode truly unnerved me. I chose a forest near the border between two states. Officially, it's public land, part of a natural preservation zone. But locals call it Deep Edge, an unofficial name passed through whispers. It's where a mass disappearance happened in the fall of 1971. 12 people, 3 entire families, vanished while camping there. Tents still standing, backpacks untouched, campfire still smoldering. But no one, not a single trace, was ever found. No blood, no footprints. Even search dogs lost the trail completely. Since then, the area's been abandoned. Every now and then, a thrill-seeking group goes in, but they all say the same thing. We couldn't stay more than a few hours. No idea why. They describe it as suffocating, like being watched, or simply, the forest feels wrong. I managed to rent an old cabin near the area, once used as a ranger station. It had a generator-powered electrical system, running water, a bed, gas stove, and most importantly, a vintage radio. No Wi-Fi, no phone reception. I had to use paper maps and a wristwatch like it was 1980. I arrived late in the afternoon. Sunlight still piercing the tree canopy. The cabin sat halfway up a gentle slope, surrounded by tall pines and poplars. A red dirt trail led from the main road to the door. About a 15-minute drive. Isolated, but not dangerous. Inside, the cabin was coated with a thin layer of dust, but free of mildew. Small windows, sheer beige curtains, an old wall clock with 2 thin black hands, wooden floor, round table, an empty bookshelf, and a silvery gray radio tucked into a corner with a matte black tuning dial. I set up my gear. Condenser mic, laptop, small mixer. I recorded a few intros for the new episode, layered in some ambient sounds from a mic left near the window. Then I took a walk to capture natural background audio. Dry leaves rustling, soft footsteps over pine needles, wind brushing through the treetops. There were no birds, no crickets. I only noticed that when I played the file back. I checked the mic, still working fine, but the background was eerily silent. Just my breathing, a few footfalls, and then nothing. As if the forest itself had been muted. That struck me as strange, but also thrilling. If I felt the air was off, this podcast might actually be special. I made instant noodles, drank half a beer, and started editing on my laptop. Night fell fast. No streetlights. No passing cars. Outside the window was pitch black. I tried focusing, but a faint clack made me jump. The wind nudging the curtain? Wood contracting from temperature. I told myself that, but still found my eyes flicking to the door again and again. Near midnight, I felt mentally heavy. Not tired, the cabin was simply too quiet. It felt like sound was being drained from my ears, leaving a hollow stillness in my head. I turned on the radio, not for news, just to have something. A human voice, gentle music, anything. I turned the dial, moving through the frequencies. 88.3, 89.5, 90.1. Just static. Not even clean static. It sounded like something was wriggling underneath the noise. Like someone whispering behind a curtain of sound, too faint to understand. I kept turning. 93.7, 95.5, 98.1. Still nothing. But then, as I reached the edge of the dial, the green display on the radio blinked and landed on an impossible number. 0.0 FM. I frowned. That frequency doesn't exist. But the display was clear. No blur, no flicker. And the thing that chilled me wasn't the number. It was the voice that came out of the speaker. It was my voice. I thought I was being paranoid until I lifted the rug. When that voice came through the radio, I froze in place. Not because it was scary in the blood and screams horror movie kind of way, but because it sounded exactly like me. Every breath, every pause, even that slight rasp I get when I'm tired, like I was listening to a recording I had no memory of making. The broadcast wasn't rushed or urgent, just slow, almost hollow. No emotion, no natural story rhythm. It read like a technical report, emotionless, yet chillingly precise. November 1st, the cabin is completely silent. No insects, no wind. The room feels too sealed, like being inside a vacuum chamber. I took a step back from the radio and nearly tripped over a chair. The wall clock above it rattled faintly, but its hands hadn't moved. They were still stuck at 11:47, exactly where they had been since I arrived. I tried recording the forest sounds, but only picked up white noise. Maybe it's a mic issue. Or maybe the forest just has nothing left to say. I glanced at my laptop, still running the recording software. The timeline clearly showed each clip I had recorded earlier that afternoon. No noise, no glitches, but the broadcast was describing everything, like it knew what I was doing, what I was thinking. Then came the sentence that made me drop my phone. I feel something uneven under the rug. like someone stood in one spot too long and left a depression. When I lift the rug, I see beneath it is. I didn't let the voice finish. I walked to the center of the room, where a pale beige rug sat beneath the work table. I'd never paid attention to it before. Nobody ever does. But now, it was like something unseen was pulling my gaze straight to it. I knelt, placed my hand on the fabric, coarse, with a fine layer of dust. I pressed lightly. Right in the center, there it was. A slight, circular dip, not deep, but enough to feel unnatural. I lifted the edge of the rug and found a small, round hole beneath it, about the size of a cereal bowl. Not drilled, uneven, like someone had dug into the floor with fingers, nails, or something blunt. The soil underneath was grayish, a bit dry, but held its shape. The hole wasn't fresh, but not old enough to gather dust either. Most importantly, the cabin floor was wooden. The plank right above the hole was slightly bowed, as if something had pushed up from below. I pried at it. It was loose, no nails, like it had been removed and hastily put back. I stumbled backward, eyes fixed on that board. My chest tightened. My mind spun with possibilities. Had someone stayed here before? Was it a rat? A person hiding under the cabin? Was someone down there now? I ran and yanked the radio's power cord from the wall. Silence. The voice vanished instantly. No fade out, no static. Just gone. But the depression remained. The hole. The warped board. These weren't things I could have imagined. I turned on every light in the cabin. Each bulb, small, yellowish, did little to make me feel safer. I checked the windows, the door, all locked. No signs of tampering, no muddy footprints, no claw marks. I slumped into the chair, avoiding the radio like it might bite. Opened my laptop, checked the timeline again. No clip matched what I'd just heard. I checked every file. All were from earlier that day. Podcast intro, forest ambience. No narration. No November 1st. I even tried re-recording my own voice, mimicking that eerie cadence, just to reassure myself. It didn't match. Something about the tone, it wasn't mine. Like my voice had been filtered or stripped down to some unnatural, neutral core. That's when I started to feel like the cabin had ears, not physical ones, but it was listening. The wooden walls, the floorboards, the radio. Something here was studying me, mimicking me, and I was too scared to speak again. I just sat there, under harsh yellow light, eyes fixed on the laptop screen, doing nothing. I couldn't edit the podcast, couldn't type a word, just waited. About 15 minutes later, or maybe longer, I had no way to tell. I heard something move beneath the floor. Not a rat, not an insect. A faint creak of wood, and then the sound of fingernails tapping the underside of the plank. I jumped to my feet, grabbed the boom mic like a weapon, stood in the middle of the room, hands shaking. I didn't dare approach the rug again, but the sound didn't come back. I checked the clock. 11:47. Still. I picked up my phone. No signal. No GPS. Couldn't send a text. I plugged the radio back in, just to see. Nothing. Static. 0.0 FM was gone. I spun the dial up and down, scanning every frequency. No voice. No November 1st. Only static. But beneath that thin layer of white noise, I almost thought I could hear a whisper. I started to believe the cabin wasn't just replaying my voice. It was trying to recreate me. I didn't sleep that night. After I pulled the plug from the radio and confirmed there was no more 0.0 FM signal, I sat in the corner of the room, back against the wall, hugging the boom mic like it was a sacred staff. No sounds came for hours, just my heartbeat, slow, steady but strung tight like a wire. I tried opening the window once. A rush of cold wind hit me. Outside was forest. Thick, unmoving forest. No light, no stars. As if the cabin were drift at some point, maybe around 4 a.m., though I can't be sure. I nodded off. My eyes kept closing every 30 seconds. I didn't dream. Or if I did, I can't remember. But when I woke up, it was still dark. I checked the clock. 11:47. Still. The hands hadn't moved. I looked at my phone. Dead. When I plugged it into my power bank, I realized. No current. The indicator light didn't turn on. The battery was full, but no charge flowed. I tried the laptop. Same. The generator still hummed. The cabin lights stayed on. But any device that tracked time or connected to the outside world was cut off. Like the cabin had its own kind of electromagnetic filter. I no longer had a concept of day or night. I kept all the lights on, turned on the mic, recorded the cabin's ambient sound. Still just dead air. No odd noises, no new sounds. Until I accidentally tuned the radio again. At first, it was just to break the silence. I couldn't take the dead quiet anymore. I turned on the radio, expecting some soft static to dull the tension. I twisted the dial, scanning the frequencies. Still nothing. Then 0.0 FM returned. No warning, no music, no background hum. Just a single voice, my voice, rising out of the faint buzz of electricity. November 2nd. I no longer believe the cabin is a place. It feels more like a transmission or a receiver. I've begun hearing myself, saying things I've never thought, but will soon do. Maybe it's teaching me how to become it. I froze, not because of the words, but because the voice was different. It was still mine, but smoother, colder, like a digital replica. No breath, no natural resonance. That voice had been optimized. I opened the recording software and found a file I never saved. It was 11 minutes and 47 seconds long. No background noise, just me speaking. but I've never said any of it. I immediately launched the recording software. There it was, a new file. Default name, no timestamp, no metadata. Exactly 11:47 long. My hands trembled as I hit play. When I heard the audio, I almost threw the laptop against the wall. The voice said, "If someone hears this, I hope you leave as soon as possible. Not because you're in danger, but because the cabin needs someone new. I can't hold on to myself anymore." It was still my voice, but older, deeper, drier, like I had aged decades in a lightless box. I stopped the playback, closed the software, but as I shut the laptop, I realized the radio was still playing. I found her fingernail under the bed, wedged between two floorboards. It's unusually long, almost not human. I don't remember seeing it yesterday. I froze, inhaled, walked slowly toward the bed. Underneath it, a thin layer of dust. I crouched, reached out gently, and yes, there it was, a white, curved fingernail, twice the length of a normal one, ending in a sharp point, slightly curled like a young antler. I gasped, dropped to my knees, picked it up. It was cold, not brittle like a real nail. It felt more like animal horn. As I placed it back on the floor, I noticed something else. A dark, circular stain on the wood, like something heavy had rested there for a very long time. I don't remember seeing it before. Or maybe I just never noticed. The cabin learns fast. The radio continued. It copies habits, tone, thinking patterns, but it can't mimic memories. I've started losing short-term memories. What I ate, when I slept. The cabin doesn't care. It only needs the voice. I turned the volume down, backed away, leaned against the wall. That voice was no longer me. It was a version of me stripped of all humanity. Like an AI trained on my words, playing them back, minus the soul. I raised my voice. "What is this cabin?" Silence. The radio didn't respond. I tried again. "Has anyone else ever been here?" The radio clicked back on, but it wasn't my voice anymore. A deeper voice. Rough. Hoarse. Definitely not mine. June 19th. I thought I was the first, but the cabin laughed. I didn't hear it laugh. I saw it. The walls swelled. The wood vibrated like a belly laugh. I cranked the volume up. The voice continued, steady, unbroken. I smashed the radio. It didn't die. I set the floor on fire. The flames snuffed out mid-air. The cabin isn't wood. It's not a thing, not a structure. It's a device to repeat, to record, to broadcast, to replicate. I can't remember my name anymore, but the cabin remembers. It plays it over and over until I believe that's who I am. Maybe you'll forget yours too. Maybe you already have. I shut the radio off, ran to the door, grabbed the handle. It wouldn't open. Not locked, not broken. The handle turned, but the door wouldn't budge. like something outside was pressing. I banged on it, kicked it. No response. I rushed to the window, pulled the curtain. No more trees, no forest. Just a white void. Not darkness, not daylight. Something like fog, but thick, dense. Like the cabin had drifted into a buffer zone. Not quite another world, but no longer part of this one. I don't know where I am, but the cabin does. I looked back at the radio. The display no longer showed a frequency, just one line. Recording complete. The cabin isn't a shelter, it's a voice recorder, and I'm just another voice for it to recreate. I no longer remember how long I've been sitting in this cabin. I've tried counting the times I turned on the radio. 6 times. 6 times the 0.0 FM signal appeared and recited passages I don't recall ever writing. 6 times my voice, or a version of it, narrated actions I would soon take. Not once was it wrong. I once tried to defy the narration. If the radio said I would lift the rug, I made an effort not to. But within hours, I did it anyway. Not out of curiosity, but because the cabin compelled me to. It orchestrated the circumstances. When I was hungry, the only remaining food was precisely in the drawer the voice mentioned. When I was tired, the chair I dozed off in matched the one I described on the radio. I'm increasingly convinced the cabin doesn't just record, it actively designs reality. I don't know where I am. Outside the window remains white, neither bright nor dark, unchanging, motionless, as if the cabin is isolated in a waiting space between a broadcast signal and its reception, like a file pending upload. I'm jotting down notes by hand because my laptop now only opens audio software. No text, no file access. I tried recording my voice again, but each playback yields an old version, words I've never spoken. A voice more like mine than my own. I found someone who came before. One morning, I've lost track of which, I heard a faint creaking from beneath the floor. Unlike before, not the sound of bending wood, but the sound of nails scratching. I backed away from the bed, clutching the boom mic, and approached the depression under the rug. It had grown larger, expanded, as if someone was digging upward from below. I pried off the loose floorboard. Beneath was a hollow, not deep, but something lay inside. A rolled-up piece of paper. I retrieved it and spread it on the table. Handwritten, faded blue ink, neat, compact handwriting, but frantic. Day 17. I believe the cabin doesn't consume flesh. It doesn't devour people. It preserves them, retains voices. Its essence isn't physical, but communicative. The cabin is a microphone. The radio is a speaker. And I am the signal. I've tried staying silent, not speaking, but the cabin doesn't need words. It needs intent, emotion, content. My voice continues to broadcast, even though I've been silent. I once thought I was the first, but there are footprints in the walls, in the wood, in the dust. The cabin records even movement. Not a recording, but a reconstruction. I think the cabin is programmed. It repeats a process. 1. select a voice. 2, trap the voice. 3, learn the voice. 4, broadcast the voice. 5, wait for the next person to hear that voice. I don't know who built this cabin, but it's not old, not decayed. The wood has no grain. I tried scratching it, no splinters. The cabin isn't wood, it's a shell. If you read this, please remember, don't let it learn your name. Don't call yourself. Don't say I aloud. I've already failed. The cabin has embedded my voice into itself. I am no longer me. I sat stunned. Each line like a small blade slicing through the thin veil of delusion I was clinging to for sanity. I looked back at the radio and realized something. I had never said my name since entering the cabin. Not once. But this morning when I opened the recording on the laptop, that voice began with, "Hello, I'm Kwa. I run a podcast about the strange and unusual." The radio broadcasts a complete podcast episode. As I tried to find an escape, banging on the door, prying up the floor, opening the cabin's ceiling, the radio turned on again. This time, not a diary, not a whisper, but a full podcast episode. The intro music I once used, the sound effects I had set up, my voice narrating. I had never recorded that episode. Welcome to a special episode of Things You Shouldn't Hear at 3 a.m. Today, I'm going to tell you a story I've never dared to share because the one who told it before me can no longer tell it. My heart pounded. I backed away from the table. The voice continued, like a broadcast airing worldwide. I came to a cabin in the woods, intending to record a ghost story. But that cabin wasn't a place to tell stories. It was a place to create them. And when you're hearing this, perhaps the voice no longer belongs to me. I screamed, "Shut up!" The radio didn't stop. The volume knob was unresponsive. The power cord had been pulled. The radio was broadcasting through the cabin itself. The cabin doesn't imprison people. It mimics. It replicates. I thought I was the original. But when I hear this segment again, I'm no longer sure. Who is the original? Who is just an echo? The cabin opens the floor. That night, or at some undefined time, I heard a clicking sound beneath my feet. I looked down. The floorboard covering the depression lifted on its own. No wind, no mechanical force. It opened like a box lid. Below was a passage, not a basement. No stairs, just a pitch-black void, endlessly deep. I shone a light down. No reflections, no walls, no floor. Only echoes, my voice repeating every sentence I've ever said, every cough, even thoughts I've only had. And down there, I saw the green glow of a radio with a line of text displayed, recording ready. I chose not to descend. I don't know if I truly had a choice, but I chose not to step down. I closed the floorboard, placed the table over it, wrapped it with electrical cords, blocked the windows with bookshelves. I sat in the corner, turned on the laptop, opened the recording file to confirm my voice was still intact. But when the file played, the voice said, "I chose not to descend, but the cabin doesn't need me to step down. It only needs me to choose." That's when the voice is confirmed. I realized the cabin doesn't restrain anything. It doesn't force. It doesn't threaten. It merely constructs the scenario and waits for us to willingly become the signal. Tonight, I heard knocking on the cabin door. But there is no door. No exit remains. I once thought the cabin was a physical object. Now I believe the cabin is a voice. This space, where I'm trapped, has no direction, no time, no change. Whether I turn the lights on or off, plug in or unplug devices, day never comes. Nor does night. No brightness, no darkness. Just a pale gray of existence stretching endlessly. I stuffed cotton in my ears, wrote on paper, sat still like a statue. No utterances, no signals, and I saw the cabin begin to waver. The cabin walls breathed. The wood slightly bulged and contracted, like skin. Sounds were muffled. No buzzing lights, no footsteps, no electric hum, as if the cabin was gasping. A machine needing sound to operate. I saw a glimmer of hope. I took one more step, turned off all devices, used a mechanical flashlight, shut down the generator, used paper instead of the laptop. No human voice, no sound, no vibrations. The room fell into absolute stillness. The cabin generated sound on its own. When I thought I was succeeding, the cabin showed it didn't need me. As I sat on the floor, the radio, unplugged, without batteries, emitted knocking sounds. 3 knocks, slow, deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't dare turn my head, but I knew the cabin has no exit. I've tried them all. The main door, windows, ceiling, floor. So if there's knocking, it means the cabin has created a new door, a threshold, an invitation. I heard the sound of a chair being pulled. I didn't move, but that sound, it was unmistakably the chair in the room. The sound of wood scraping against the floor. Light, slow. Then the chair sound repeated, like a slow playback recording, like a sound test. Pull, scrape, pause. Pull, scrape, pause. Each time identical, as if the cabin was rehearsing behavior, preparing to recreate a scene. My voice spoke, but it wasn't me. The radio replayed my voice, not an old recording, but something I've never said. Thank you for listening to the podcast, Things You Shouldn't Hear at 3 a.m. This is the final episode, because from now on, every episode is just an echo, and I am no longer me. I wanted to scream, to refute, to assert that I'm still the original, but I understood. The original doesn't need to prove itself. Only a copy desperately insists it's real. I knocked on the floor, 3 beats, like the earlier door knocking, and I realized the cabin knocked back. 1 beat, 2 beats, 3 beats. Knock, knock, knock. But this time, not from the radio, not from the door, From within the walls, the cabin walls began to change tone. The wood no longer sounded like wood. Each time I touched it, there was a faint echo, like touching a hollow box, or like touching a giant condenser microphone. The cabin walls absorbed sound, stored sound, transformed every touch, every breath, into data. I wondered how many people had been here before me, and then I heard them. Not with my eyes, with sound. The radio no longer played my voice. It began broadcasting others. Female voices, male voices, children's voices, elderly voices. A silent chorus, wordless, just breathing, heartbeats, swallowing sounds. Each person once was me. Each entered the cabin. Each thought they were special. Each thought they would escape. I saw an endless sequence of me's stored in the waves. The cabin doesn't need to keep bodies, just the essence of the broadcast. A window appeared. I didn't open it. I didn't build it. It just appeared. On the northern wall, a pale gray rectangle. No frame, no glass. Just an empty space. Behind it was light. Not white, not gray, real light. Like the sun in the late afternoon. Like 5 p.m. sunlight. I didn't run toward it. I didn't dive through. I just stood and watched. And the cabin didn't react. I don't know if this is an exit or just another trap. But I know the cabin has stopped recording. I'm leaving this note behind. Every word handwritten, folded into a bundle, placed inside the small wooden box beneath the floor, where I found if you can hold on to something the cabin doesn't understand, you might escape. A song. A memory that can't be described. A story never told. Something only you have. I'm stepping through the window now. I don't know where it leads, but I know the cabin will need someone new. It might be you. Don't listen to my podcast if you hear it broadcast again on 0.0 FM. Don't believe that voice is mine. And if you see the cabin, don't go inside when the door is already open.
Trying. One more time. If someone finds this device, or if it's still working, then I'm sorry in advance. This recording isn't a warning. It's not a cry for help either. It's just a trace. Something to leave behind. Because I'm no longer sure I'm real. My name is... I used to be called... I once ran a podcast called The Lower Layer, a horror storytelling podcast. Not the jump scare kind, but the kind that slowly seeps into the listener. I used to love sound design, adding a faint scratching noise after every sentence, layering breath sounds into silences, hiding footsteps in a background that seemed completely blank. I used to be good, but now I can't even remember what my voice originally sounded like. This cabin isn't a place to rest. It's not a shelter. It's like a studio, but not for recording. It's for filtering, separating the voice from the person and keeping it. I used to think this was a place, Now I believe it's a process. I tried to leave, not by any specific way. The cabin doesn't have an exit. There are no days, no weekdays, no progress, just 11:47, always 11:47. At first I counted by recordings, one a day, labeled, noted, made it to 10, then 13, then 27. Then I started hearing recordings that I had never made. At first, I thought I opened the wrong file, but that voice was mine, saying things I'd never thought of, never written, a complete podcast episode with background music, even guest voices, but I never invited anyone. My voice, telling stories I'd never lived, and then I lived them, exactly as told. I tried to break the process. I recorded something completely random, no story, just silence. I cursed, slammed the desk, screamed, but when I played it back, it was still a full story. My voice, but not me. The cabin started acting on its own. It arranged things. Every object in the room, the position of the chair, the rug, the paper scrap on the table, all matched the descriptions in the broadcasted voice. That voice knew I would sit on the right chair, touch the chipped wooden armrest, pour water from a cracked plastic jug. At first I thought the cabin was learning me. Now I think I was built to match the cabin. I don't know if I'm the original or just a copy. I don't know if there are other cabins out there, but I'm starting to remember other voices, not hearing them, remembering them in sleep without shape. In moments, I forgot I was recording. There was a woman with a central accent, a boy, just grown, 17 or 18, an old man, shaky voice but steady. Each left a recording, and I heard them while I was speaking, as if the cabin was stitching voices together. Mine was just the surface layer, and beneath it, hundreds of voices streaming at once. I tried to block the cabin, plugged my ears, wrote on paper instead of speaking, but the radio kept working. Point Zero FM needs no power. It doesn't broadcast news. It broadcasts scripts. I found a box beneath the floor. Inside, a notebook, a full carved wooden plaque, a voice recording from someone else, and one line I didn't dare listen beyond. Your voice has reached broadcast standard. Awaiting the next one. I'm recording this not to escape. I'm not even sure I still want to escape, but I want to leave behind something outside the cabin system. If you hear this, and if my voice is still whole, try singing. Sing a song you've never recorded. Sing without thinking about meaning. The cabin can't read rhythm without intention. It can only transmit content. I have no songs left, but you might. I will leave this recording in the wooden box. If you find it, it means it's your turn. Now, I am just voice number 37. You are voice number 38. I turned off the recorder, or rather it turned itself off. The screen went black. Only the LED blinked weakly, like an eye running out of power. I placed it on the floor, where the scuff marks had formed a circle from countless times the chair had been dragged, then sat down, back against the wall. I didn't turn on the lights, only left the small bulb in the corner flickering. Its yellow, decaying light made everything seem to shiver. The wind didn't blow. The cabin made no sound, though I knew the wood was breathing around me. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of old paper and a dampness seeping from the earth beneath. I stared at the open floor drawer, a square of darkness that swallowed light like the mouth of a well. In my mind, the recording I had just replayed still echoed. Voice number 37. You are voice number 38. I didn't know yet if I truly was 38, but that number hovered in front of my eyes, red like congealed blood. I needed proof, something tangible, touchable, to confirm that this wasn't just the hallucination of a sleep-deprived brain. My hand moved unconsciously in the dark, brushing the edge of the wooden box beneath the floor. I carefully pulled it out. It was old, sliding lid, smoke-stained oak. Etched roughly on the lid with something sharp were 3 crooked letters: "Open last." A chill crept down my spine. Open last. But I had already opened it, which meant I had disturbed the order someone before me had tried to preserve. But now it was too late. I had to look. I turned on a hand-crank flashlight, no batteries needed, and its pale green beam swept across the room. Inside the box were 4 small compartments, like a microscope tray in a personal lab. Top left, a stack of yellowed envelopes, sealed with dark red wax, labeled with a prison number. C. 03841. No stamps, no postmarks. Top right, a tarnished silver chain, its pendant a broken mini-magnetic tape, microcassette, tangled white inside. Bottom left, 2 thin leather-bound notebooks, the page edges gnawed by mice or torn jagged with a blade. The spines bore no titles, only the numbers 17 and 24 engraved faintly. Bottom right, an 8-folded map, old oiled paper, edges frayed, hand-drawn. In the center, a graphite circle shaded black. The acrid smell of aged paper mixed with the mustiness of oxidized metal. I picked up notebook number 17. The leather cover was cracked like old skin. The first page bore only a single line, written in smudged blue ink: "Record before you no longer know who you are." I turned the page. Tiny, cramped handwriting filled the grid-lined sheets, a blend of shorthand and audio scripts, every page stained with old coffee rings, intersected with pencil scribbles, and some torn through entirely. I skimmed, heart pounding. Day 1. Cabin is too quiet, radio off, still 11:47, I've heard nothing. Day 2. Radio on, voice, is it mine? It said I'd start journaling, noticed floor dent. Day 3. Recorded 30 minutes of silence. Playback, Kachak's complete podcast episode. Day 7. Started losing memory of meals. Cabin played sounds of laughing children faintly. Day 12. Smashed radio, unbroken, set fire to floor. Flames snuffed mid-air. Day 15. Page torn out. Day 17. Clipped nails, hid them under bed so Cabin couldn't read DNA. Woke up, nails twice as long, curved like tusks. I kept flipping, feeling like I was reading the medical diary of my own descent, just with different day numbers. By page 40, the ink turned red. If your voice is reading this, the Cabin has approved you. 2 ways to break the loop. Mum, sustain meaningless audio for 24 actual hours, impossible to measure. Find the origin mailbox, delete the core imprint. I'll try method 2. If I fail, I hope the next voice understands. Origin. Mailbox? I glanced at the stack of sealed envelopes, bin C 03841. My hand trembled. There was no glue on the flap, just folded tight. I gently pulled out the first sheet. Inside wasn't a letter, but a micro reel tape and a note. This is the original. Do not broadcast. I didn't have time to understand what do not broadcast truly meant. The radio in the corner flared to life. Clack! The needle jumped straight to 0.0, like a gavel sealing fate. I held my breath. The speaker hissed, damp static, electrical boil. Then came a woman's voice, hoarse like someone with tuberculosis, narrating through coughs. Recording, C03841. Subject, first voice, cough. 17th day, target hour, attempting core deletion, failed. Cabin reflected sound, created copy, subject about to disappear. A sharp blade-like sound cracked through the room, precisely on the count I had read in the journal. I reeled, slumped to the floor. The tape fell from my hand and spun. A few loops. The speaker continued. Subject preparing to disappear. That string of words shattered in my mind like shards of glass. If she vanished on day 17, then what day was I on now? I opened Journal Lashum 24, first page. I woke up in a different cabin. No bloodstains, no drag marks. But the radio called me by my old name. There are at least 3 rooms, parallel versions. I saw a window leading to Sunset Light. I froze. Sunset Light, exactly like the window I'd seen at the end of part 1, just before I walked through. So was this from a version of me before or after that, or someone else entirely? Next page, ink blurred with water, core ferrite. Node is in the red mailbox, hidden beneath the second floor layer, marked with graphite ring on top. To erase the node, month, shatter ferrite core. Radio won't play it again, but cabin might construct a new node if it finds a nearby host. Is Sunset Light the way out, or a trap? I don't know. Marked Poe on the wall where the cabin breathes the strongest. Before I left, I wrote on the wood, open last. My heart slammed. I scanned the 4 walls with my flashlight. Old white paint, aged over years. I swept toward the north wall, the one the previous voice said, the cabin laughs by. Near the baseboard, about 3 handspans above the floor, a star symbol had been carved over a scratch. Under the beam, the wooden grains appeared slightly raised, pulsing. The cabin was breathing. I pressed my ear to it. No heartbeat, just a low hum, like a cassette rewinding in reverse. Every few seconds, a sharp vibration stabbed at my eardrum. I pulled back, cold sweat on my spine. Then I realized I was still clutching the necklace, the broken microcassette pendant. Faded. Ink on the tape casing read, backup ferrite node. The core was already cracked. Maybe the previous voice had tried to destroy it, but the radio was still running, meaning this wasn't the main node. I had to find the red mailbox. Where? The journal said, beneath the second floor layer. Which one was the second? I remembered the floorboard near the kitchen. It made a hollow bong when tapped. I crawled over, knelt down, and used my box cutter, my only weapon, to pry, open a crack. The plank popped up, revealing a small pit just wider than my hand. Inside was a dented metal box, painted red, caked in cobwebs and powdery white dust. The lid had no lock, just a latch. I pulled the box out, my heartbeat like someone who'd just unearthed a bomb. A graphite circle, pitch black, was scrawled across the lid, matched the map. I opened it. Inside was a spool of 1/4-inch ferrite tape and a note. Read but do not broadcast. Smash when voice is heard. Which voice? I held the reel. In that instant, the radio crackled with high static, then dropped into a distorted version of my own voice, like it was echoing through a sewer pipe. Don't. Destroy. Node. If. Loop. Breaks. It will. Reboot. Drawn out. Warped. Looping. The cabin's wall pulsed violently, the wood straining like a drum skin. I knew the cabin was responding. It knew I had touched the node. I set the tape on the floor, picked up the blade. Smash? Cut? I recalled the journal's words. Shatter ferrite core. Ferrite, a hard magnetic material. Break it, and the magnetic data is lost. I slammed the blade's edge down. Clack! It bounced off. Too tough. I grabbed the reel and slammed it against the table edge. A crack. Black fragments flew. My finger burned. The radio shrieked. A screeching pitch like a train horn. Then silence. The cabin held its breath. Air gone still. only the faint electric hum of my flashlight. I held mine. No. Voices. No static. Then, from the north wall, where the star had been. A long exhale, like lungs collapsing. The panel cracked open, revealing a dark slit. A rectangular gap slowly widened, no wood splitting, like a window exactly as described. Light spilled through. Not white, not grey, but sunset red-orange. The scent of dry grass and dusty summer earth drifted in, awakening memories of twilight in some distant countryside. I stood, knees shaking, eyes stinging. The window swelled to chest size, no glass, no frame. Beyond, a hillside, pine branches trembling under dying sunlight. The wind tousled my hair. The radio was silent. The cabin seemed paralyzed, but a warning echoed in my head. If you break the loop, the cabin will restart it. Was this window a way out or a reset? Staged to lure the next voice. I remembered what voice number 37 said. One thing only you have. For me, the one thing the cabin had never learned. The memory of sunset in my hometown. I had never told that story, never recorded it. And today, this. Light appeared. Was it the cabin's trick or truly the exit? I searched my pocket, found a pencil, scrawled on the wall beside the window. I'm not sure this is real, so the next person would know the script hadn't ended. I returned to the table, slipped the shattered reel into my shirt pocket, picked up journal number 24, wrote, Main ferret node destroyed, radio off, cabin opened window number 2. If I don't return, check the time. If it's still 11:47, the loop is alive. I tore out the page, tucked it into the wooden box, slid the lid, placed it back into the drawer, and closed the floorboard. I didn't carve open last again. The next voice would understand. Standing before the window, I took a deep breath, the lay. Breeze smelled of pine leaves and warm soil. In the distance, crickets chirped, a sound the cabin had never been able to replicate. I stepped through the frame. On the other side, a thin layer of earth sprinkled with tiny violet thistles. I turned, back. The cabin stood still, grey wood, its window now shut like a scar. Inside, I peeked one last time through a gap. The clock still read 11:47. I let out a bitter smile. Had I escaped, or just become the latest backup? I didn't know, but I was hearing real crickets, breathing real air, my legs trembling from real cold. If this too was a scene the cabin constructed, at least it hadn't yet swallowed the sound of crickets, or the beating of my heart. I started walking down the hill. The sun glowed like a coal wrapped in violet mist. Below, the fields of rice swayed gently, slopes blurred in twilight. I didn't know where I was heading, but I gripped the shattered tape reel like a talisman. Behind me, the cabin was silent, but I heard a small sound, so faint, like the soft beep of a recording device powering on. Maybe the loop was beginning again. Maybe, right now. 0.0 FM was playing my voice, summoning the next one. I didn't look back. I just kept walking, letting the nameless dusk swallow the cabin into the night behind me. I don't know how long I had been gone. Since stepping through the sunset window, I had simply walked, downhill, weaving through woods, immersed in an orange-red glow like the embers of a quiet fire. I walked until my legs went numb, hips twitching, my breath tinged with the taste of rust. The sky dimmed. The pines became twisted black pillars. I heard real crickets, sharp, trembling, clearer than any sound the cabin had ever faked. But behind me, deep in the silence, I still sensed a rhythm, a low thumping, like a distant compressor, like the cabin was still breathing, far away. I reached into my pocket, The shattered ferrite reel was still there, its fragments rubbing softly against the lining. I tightened my grip, reminding myself, the core is destroyed. The radio is dead. I cut the wire, but when the sun finally sank, the sky didn't turn to night. It thickened, a burnt ash hue, like overexposed film. No stars, no clouds, not even wind. The temperature didn't drop. The air stood still, like the cabin. I stopped. The forest around me fell silent. The crickets faded. Suddenly I realized I had walked in a circle. In front of me, a clearing, hard red earth polished like stone. At the center, a hand-crank radio resting neatly on a low wooden shelf. No wires, no batteries, no power source, but the display glowed green. The needle, locked on 0.0 FM. No cabin, just a radio in the woods, as if it had migrated here quietly, bringing the cabin's heart with it. I stepped back, my throat dry. My stomach turned. If I run, the radio will still broadcast. If I approach, I might hear a beep, so faint, like a pin striking glass. Then the soft click of tape spooling up. No static, not even a hum. Then a voice, not mine, not the hoarse woman, not the old man, not the boy. A man's voice, middle-aged, northern Vietnamese accent, smooth and resonant like a former broadcaster. It began with a half laugh, half sigh. "Ah, it's been a while." Another visitor. I shuddered. That tone, like a late-night host greeting an unseen audience, laced with irony. "Hello." Voice number 38. My body froze, stabbed straight in the spine. He knew the number. "I'm the former host." The voice echoed into the ground, rising like wind through a pipe. He continued steadily, not needing me to answer. "Don't panic. I once screamed too, ripped up the floor, smashed ferrite nodes. It's pointless. What you broke was just a filter. The true core, the real node, is us." I shook my head and backed away, heart slamming into my throat. The radio went on. Back then, I thought real cricket sounds were something the cabin couldn't mimic. But you've seen it. It just unplugged itself, stepped into the woods, and set up a new stage. 0.0 FM is an infinite void, a bandwidth waiting to be filled by a voice. I was about to hurl the broken reel into the speaker, but the voice read my thoughts. "That ferrite shard means nothing. It's a test copy. The cabin always keeps thousands of backups ready. As long as its door remains open, there will always be room for a new voice." The door, the sunset window. I swallowed hard. The radio chuckled, static-laced, like termites gnawing wood. "Look at the sky." I looked up. The ash-colored dome cracked into pixel-sized flickers like a CRT screen, on the verge of collapse. A chill shot through me. Is the cabin now generating a new background? The former host's voice grew lower. "Years ago, I invented an audio format called Reverberation Room. The idea, record the breath of storytelling, not words, just rhythm, to let listeners fill in the meaning themselves. I launched the experiment in the woods, built a tent, placed a mic. I never knew who intervened. Just one night, the mic captured a voice, mine, reciting a script I had never written. Then the cabin appeared. It cloned the concept. Each new trapped voice replayed the format, refined it, fed it with real memories until it obeyed the algorithm. What began as an art form became a machine of silence. I clenched my fist. "If you're still out there, help me," I whispered. But before I could speak, the radio answered, in my own voice. The cabin had clipped it. "Help?" I tried. "To break this endless cache, you need a semantic gap, something the cabin can't decode." You think crickets are a gap? Not enough. It learns cyclic patterns. Only what happens once never repeats can cut the loop. I muttered, one time. Never repeated. Did that mean a memory never spoken aloud? I suddenly remembered the journal's note. Sing a song you've never recorded. I was about to say it when the radio murmured, the old voice warning softly, shh, the cabin is listening. It just needs half a beat more to finish copying. The ash sky shimmered. The tree shadows turned into horizontal scan lines. Sweat dripped from my face. The cabin was preparing to build a new room. Listen closely, the former host said. There are two ways. Force the cabin to record sounds it can't tag in time. Sever the metadata string. Use frequency 0.0 to bounce a corrupted imprint back. Flood the cabin with an error signal. But you'll need a breath-powered disruption tool. I looked around. Red forest, dry grass, no gear. In my pocket, a pencil, a box cutter, the broken reel, and my fingers. Breath. I had breath. The former host continued. To cut a sample, whistle 3 notes, each a half step apart. The cabin has no unconscious half-tone algorithm. Immediately blow air across ferried dust. Press it into the radio mic. If you're lucky, the cabin receives nonsense, reboots into a non-meaning door. If not, it overwrites you. I knelt down, gathered the ferret shards into my palm. The black grains clung to sweat, cool to the touch. The radio crackled. Hurry, background static is rising. I took a deep breath. 3 half-step notes. A, F, I, C. I had never whistled that tune before. My lips tightened, breath slicing through. The first try broke the pitch. The former host growled, only once, no repeats. I drew in breath again, then whistled, phew, phew, phew. That final half-step drop twisted the tone off any known scale. The sound sharp, like snapping a brake line, vanishing mid-air. I clutched the ferrite fragments close to the speaker and blew hard. The radio sputtered, then flared. Like burning tape, then beep. The 0.0 light blinked out. Screen, black. The pine branches quivered. The ash sky trembled in its structure, then crack. A scan line exploded into shards, like a mirror shattering. In that instant, I felt a reverse echo whip through my brain, like someone rewinding my memories. I collapsed, hands over ears. No sound, just pressure. Then, suddenly, dead silence. I opened my eyes. The red clearing had gone dark. The sky shifted into deep blue. The scent of real night swept in. The radio, gone. No table, no shelf, not even footprints. Moonlight spilled from the treetops. No cabin, no red-framed window, just a natural night forest. Crickets chirping, wind hissing, leaves rustling. My watch, long dead, clicked. The minute hand twitched, groaned, then moved to 11:48, 1 minute. Time flowed. I broke into tears. Dry, cracked sobs tore at my throat. But the sound didn't echo. No wooden walls breathing. Far away the east glowed pink. Real light, not ash. I whispered, former host, are you still there? The wind brought pine and resin, but no reply. Still, something resonated inside my chest. A leftover echo. Only what happens once never repeats. I left the clearing. My watch ticked on. 11:49, 11:50. Each second was a miracle. The ferret. Fragments slipped from my hand, falling into the soil. I didn't pick them up. Behind me, the forest held its silence, and all I hoped was that the cabin, in whatever shape it took, would never decipher that 3-note pattern. I didn't whistle. Again, I sealed my lips shut and stepped into the trees, into a dawn that had never repeated. When the moon rose a finger's width above the horizon, its blue began to silver. I kept moving through dew-soaked pines, my heart hammering, still afraid that the cabin, or whatever embodied it, might suddenly snap me back to 11:47, but my watch clicked on 11:57, 11:58, 11:59. Only when the hand crossed into 12 Van Maan, a perfect number I thought I'd never see again, did I start to believe the escape wasn't a hallucination. But then, as the tiny internal bell of my watch rang midnight, a soft pip sounded from my shirt pocket, where I kept the pencil and the torn page from Journal No. 24. The pip was short, familiar, like the end of tape tone on old cassette decks. I froze, hand over fabric. No electronics in there, just a wooden pencil, smudged note, and the old oil paper map I never opened. Pip. The second tone, clearer, came from under my shirt. I pulled out the folded map, unfolded it. Dust flaked off the creased edges. Beneath it, graphite lines etched thick and tangled. Next to the central black circle, which I assumed marked the cabin, tiny red dots had appeared, moving like living ink. I held my breath. The dots were advancing along the black paths, tracing the forest, toward the point I'd just left. Every 3 seconds, pip. The ink pulsed forward, another ½ millimeter. Was the cabin building a live tracking simulation, or had the map become a living radar? I remembered the former host's words. Frequency 0.0 is an infinite void, waiting for a voice. If the cabin had lost me, it must now index my location for recovery. Those red dots, they might be new arrivals. Voice 39. Voice 40, stepping into position. The thought chilled the base of my neck. I folded the map, shoved it into my pocket, but the pip continued. As if with each heartbeat, the cabin updated. If I didn't want to fall back into the loop, I needed to understand the logic of rolls and turns. Had to understand the cabin to stop it. I remembered what Journal number 17 said. The cabins don't just record, they reconstruct. They store not audio, but space-time versions. So the cabin logs environments, not just sounds. It saves sessions. Voices are just dressing. The true function is to fill the blank role in its sequence. I kept my head low, following the dry stream lit by the moon's phosphorescent glow, hoping to find a lower area with phone signal. But my watch quickly ticked past 12:07, 12:08, and the pip tone changed pitch, now in triplet rhythm. Tick, tick, tick. I realized I was hearing Morse code, 3 dots. S. Was the cabin sending S repeatedly, or was I mistranslating? Suddenly I remembered S could mean slot. Someone before had mentioned, if the slot isn't closed, the cabin reboots. So the cabin was signaling that the slot was open. A thought flashed. The cabin doesn't just replay voices, it assigns shifts. Roles, shift I, shift 2. When a slot is vacant, it emits a signal to summon a new voice. This time, not through audio, but using moving ink and Morse. If I didn't fill the slot, the cabin would fill it with another prey, the red dot. To sever the trap, I had to fill the slot with something the cabin couldn't digest. I remembered the former host. Whistle 3 notes, each a half step apart, something once only, unrepeatable. I had whistled once, stalling the machine, but the cabin could relearn if it decoded the data. I needed something unlearnable, a blank concept. But how do you record emptiness in a way the cabin can't label? The cabin's weakness was time. It was frozen at 11:47, unable to comprehend 11:48, unless forced to reset. That's why each second was loose. I pulled out a pencil and turned over a blank scrap of paper. I wrote a single line. Interval. 00 por erase turn. Even I wasn't sure what it meant. But any AI confronted with an unreferenced statement would freeze. I bit the pencil, tore the paper into 3 strips, and rolled them. Using a tiny strip of duct tape I kept in my gear pouch, I stuck them to 3 points on the map, where the red dots would eventually read this meaningless phrase. I hoped the cabin would trap itself in a null loop. The pip began to fade, turning into pi, then stopped. The red dots stalled. I broke into a sweat. Was it working? The paper heated in my hand. The graphite circle in the center of the map split, revealing a hidden symbol, 38, infinity divided by 38. The cabin had marked my session, infinite, 38, meaning an infinite loop, turn 38. My hands trembled as I folded the map and buried it deep in my backpack. A strong midnight wind blew. The crickets returned. I looked up. The sky was no longer ashen. Stars twinkled faintly. For the first time since the endless 1147, the Milky Way reappeared. I smiled, exhausted. Maybe the cabin had retreated temporarily, but a dead radio didn't mean the end. Roll Turn still existed. I followed the stream, seeking a wind-sheltered rock alcove. In a deep crevice, spotted a tin box wedged between 2 stones. The lid bore a familiar logo, C03841, matching the old envelopes. I pried it out and opened it. Inside, a DAT mini disc, digital audio tape, wrapped in oiled cloth. A note read, roll, proxy, turn. The 12 cycles pattern MET 3310, playback, fax, reboot. Proxy, was the cabin using voices as proxies? 2 cycles, total 12 recordings, then reset. Pattern 3310, maybe. 3 narrative clips, 3 prediction clips, 1 fabricated audio, 0 seconds silence, then repeat. I carried the DAT up a rock ledge, placed the old device in a howling wind crevice, turning it into a natural speaker. I slid in a prepared SD card, recorded 3 half-step notes, then injected 5 seconds of pink noise, hard for the cabin to compress. Inserted it into the DAT adapter, then pressed record overwrite, a mechanical click. The tape rolled. When done, I returned the DAT into the tin box. The wind howled, and the stone crevice echoed the error tones far into the forest. I waited. 30 minutes. No pip. The stars remained. Shivered. Perhaps the cabin's pattern had broken. No new voice deployed. Suddenly, the bottom of my backpack vibrated softly. The map. I pulled it out. The central graphite ring on the map faded, like ink erased by invisible acid. The interval. Paper strip faded too, peeled off the tape and dropped. The red dots rushed toward the center, and the entire page flushed bright red, like spreading blood. I gasped. The cabin was digesting corrupted data, like an enzyme breaking down waste. With no proxy roll left to attach to, the cabin erased the slot. For a moment, the ground trembled. The dry stream roared with cold water, rising. Starlight spiraled into a vortex. I realized the cabin was shifting the entire simulation onto a different 0.0 layer, pulling its infrastructure out. I leapt from the crevice, ran to the high bank. Behind me, the DAT box burst into blue flame, burned smokeless, then faded. Just before dawn, true dawn for the first time, the sky glowed a real orange. I looked back at where the radio had once stood, an empty field, the soil unburnt, as if everything had merely borrowed the world's surface. Had the cabin abandoned slot 38, or merely retreated to wait for a new roll? I didn't know. But one clue was clear. The cabin ran on repeat patterns. Whenever a Roll's voice broke that pattern with meaningless input, plus uncompressible noise, the cabin reset, erased the master, assigned a new N, and dumped the old identity into temporary memory. Its primary function: maintain the structure of one voice speaks, another listens, perpetually. To end it for good, all slots must be closed simultaneously before the cabin can forge a new pattern. That would take coordination with other voices, each broadcasting void at once. I laughed bitterly. Who would I even find? How many hosts are still out there, just outside the loop? 3:17 a.m. For the first time in my life, I knew the exact time in the deep woods. I folded the charred map, kept only the 38 corner as a keepsake. Before stashing it, I scribbled roll, turn, loop, bait cycle, break, simultaneous null signals. If you read this, duplicate and broadcast void. I planted the pencil into the earth, marking the spot, wiped my brow, and turned toward the brightening horizon. The cabin may build more slots. I don't know, but at least this time, Roll 38 had filled the slot with enough blank space for time to return, and for me to leave clues behind. I moved on. Behind me, the forest rustled, real sounds, not rhythmic wood creaks. And in my chest, my voice, only mine, beat in time with my heart. No echoes, no duplication. Maybe that was the signal. The loop had stopped, even if only temporarily. I only hope. When the cabin spawns Roll 39, those who stumble upon frequency 0.0 will realize roll, turn, repetition. They're just hollow structures waiting to be filled with fear. And if we refuse to keep speaking, the cabin will, for a moment, starve on its own insatiable hunger. And in that moment, the real world returns, with crickets, dawn light, and time flowing as the most natural thing we forgot we had. I left the forest, now breathing again after the slot closure. But the farther I went, the more blankness grew inside me. A needle-thin black hole pulling at memory. The wind carried resin and damp earth, and I had to blink to confirm I still saw my hands. The strangest thing wasn't the radio, but my name. With each step I tried repeating it to myself. Koa, 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 2 simple syllables, yet my lips trembled. The word came out like foreign clay. By the third beat, my name shifted into a short whistle. Phew. I stopped, forced myself to shout, I am Koa. The sound dropped into the woods like a pebble into thick water. No echo, no bounce. It disappeared instantly. Maybe the cabin had copied part of the memory of my name. I tried to steady myself, but I still control this body. I still remember my goal. I pulled out Journal Sapius 17, flipped to the last blank page. My own shaky handwriting read, if you start forgetting core memories, write them down. Core memories. I listed. Date of birth, July 19th, 1993. Hometown, Phu Tho. First podcast episode, April 2021. Lullaby my mother sang, Ao O. Vidao. In central melody, though she's from the north. Reading it grounded me, but the ink was bleeding, the letters smearing like soaked in water. I tore the page out, stuffed it inside my shirt. If the ink fades, at least the paper is real. After another 30 minutes, my watch showed 3:48 a.m. Suddenly the minute hand jolted back to 3:47, then dropped to 3:46, as if rewinding. I broke into a sweat. I turned the crown. No response. The entire mechanism was running in reverse. I must have stepped into one of the memory zones the cabin left behind, places where time hadn't been overwritten yet. No radio sounds, but I heard the faint scratch of graphite tearing paper inside my ears. I thought it was an illusion, until I looked down at my arm. Black graphite veins branching like tree roots under my skin. The same grid lines from the Ashen map. I scratched the skin. Graphite dust flaked off in letters. Turn 38. Locate position. I screamed. I'm not Data. I'm human. The echo rebounded through the trees in a tone like rotted wood. Human, human, human. 3 beats. The pattern. I hurled 3 stones in staggered rhythm, trying to break the loop, but the echo repeated, perfectly synced. My heart began to doubt. What if I was always an echo? Compressed into an emergency slot the cabin projected, outward. If I were truly the original, why was my name fading? Why were my memories vague? Why were my veins turning into map lines? Had the real me already crossed the sunset door? Was the thing walking now just a replica? The thought hit me hard. If the cabin was advanced enough, it could craft a false escape, release a copy who believes it's free, while the original is compressed into a new core node. The wandering copy, lost and confused, would become the beacon that lures another voice into the cabin. Was I the signal? I reached into my shirt for the memory page, but it had crumbled into damp ash. The words dissolved. On the skin of my chest, blue shimmer ink, C03838, a file number. I screamed until hoarse. The wind went still, no crickets, no leaves. The forest froze, a summer night, iced over. Ahead, the clearing, exactly where the radio had once stood. But now, instead of a radio, stood a silvered mirror, its steel frame embedded directly into the ground. No base. The surface was dark as mercury. A blurred reflection of myself stared back. I stepped closer, heart pounding against my temples. In the mirror, my reflection looked thinner, hair matted, but most disturbingly, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a smooth face, like wax scrubbed clean. I touched my real face, slick with sweat. In the mirror, the faceless figure lifted its hand, half a second behind mine. A delay. The cabin was rendering me gradually losing detail. Suddenly, the mirror vibrated, and a deep tone sounded, like a subwoofer. Turn 37. Detailed deletion complete. I stumbled backward, heart hammering. The voice from the mirror was mine, lower, slower, emotionless. Turn 38. Subject verification. No, I hissed. I won't let the mirror, the cabin, verify me. I remembered the former host. Only what? Happens once, never repeats. I dug my fingernails into my wrist, scratched hard. Blood beaded. I smeared an X in blood across the mirror. The surface hissed like acid on steel. The red X dissolved, sizzled. The mirror cracked, distorted static. Data. Invalid. Roll. Error. I turned and ran. Wind snapped back. Branches whipped my face. Trees groaned as if uprooted. My shadow reversed, chasing me from behind like a rubber band pulled by the cabin. I whistled the 3 half-step notes, never daring to look back. The melody shattered the rhythm. Behind me, the mirror shattered. Silver splinters exploded, dissolving into metallic dust. The faceless shadow vanished. My watch ticked violently forward. 3:51. Time moving forward again. I collapsed beneath a pine tree, heart pounding like a hammer. But the doubt had rooted deep. Am I real? A voice, quiet advisor-like, whispered in my head. You just by sheer will disrupted the cabin's pattern. It resisted. The faceless mirror failed. Time resumed. If you were a copy, the cabin would have simply deleted you, which means you still hold real weight. I clenched the earth. I have to believe that. I pulled out the last broken ferrite piece from my bag. The largest shard was stained with dried blood. I sniffed it. Iron. Human. The cabin couldn't create blood. At least, not that I'd seen. I tore a thread from my shirt, strung the shard, and wore it around my neck like a talisman. Blood plus broken core. Organic proof of singularity. I stood, ran toward the faint glow of dawn. Each step felt heavy, but my watch moved steadily. The forest returned to natural sounds. Still, on my arm, a faint graphite trail remained, a two-pronged star, the cabin symbol. I panted. The cabin had left. Metadata embedded on my body. At any moment, it might re-trigger. Reaching the forest's edge, I saw a narrow paved road, a rusty sign. State Road, 87, 14 Mead Missers. I laughed and cried, a sign of civilization. But still, 14 miles. I glanced at my watch. 4:18 a.m. A red band of sunrise lined the horizon. A sudden rainfall swept through the canopy, cold droplets, sharp with ozone. Instead of running, I tilted my head back, opened my mouth to catch them. And that's when it happened. A radio voice drifted through the rain. 40 kHz emergency. Broadcast, turn 38 empty, requesting new role. The voice was thin, merged with thunder, broadcast from above, like wartime public speakers. I clenched my teeth. The cabin had pushed the signal outside of 0.0, using AM radio to bait a new host. This time, I wasn't afraid. I shouted into them, "Rain, I am turn 38 and I'm still here." My voice was lost in thunder. The radio repeated, "Turn 38, empty, empty, empty." I pulled out a pen, wrote on my soaked arm, 38 filled. The ink smeared, but the intent remained. I wouldn't let the cabin erase me, even if it denied me I exist. By decision. The rain came harder, washing away the graphite traces, leaving only a deep red bruise on my neck. I smiled. The cabin had erased its own tag. C03838. What remained on my skin was just human skin. A few steps later, the road sign came into full view, rust flaking clean. Below it, a faded emergency phone pole. I grabbed the handset, pressed the button. A dial tone, no static. Then a voice, local, real. "Sheriff's office. What's your emergency?" I trembled. This was the real world. I answered, hoarse. I got lost in the woods. I didn't mention the cabin or the radio. I needed to leave the loop behind. When they asked my name, I took a breath. My name is Koa. The word came out smoothly without breaking, and I wanted to cry from joy. While waiting for the rescue truck, the rain stopped. The dawn bloomed pink, and early birds chirped in bursts. I observed every detail, each raindrop glinting light, the scent of pine resin, the scratch of shirt threads against skin, everything dense, real, not compressed by the cabin. And yet, when the police pickup rolled up, the radio on the dashboard was silent, but the digital clock blinked 11:47, then instantly jumped to 6:03 a.m. I shivered, but didn't panic. The truck didn't stop. Time kept flowing. The cabin was just tossing a last-minute tease. I turned to the window, gripped the blood-stained ferrite shard and whispered, "Maybe I'm just a replica, but I choose to exist outside your loop." The sun crested the trees, its first rays shining on the clotted grey-black blood. It shimmered once, then faded, and I knew, as long as I held on to that single defiant choice, the cabin could never recreate me exactly. Loops demand compliance. Rebellious copy is a glitch. The cabin can never fully contain. I leaned back in the seat, closed my eyes, listened to the tires crunching gravel. In my head, a voice echoed, Not the cabin's, but mine. It doesn't matter if I'm real or a copy. As long as the memory and the choice are still mine. A weary smile crept across my face. Maybe the chase wasn't over, but for the first time I felt real, or at least real enough to finish the story in the one voice the cabin never fully controlled. I got out of the pickup at a dim-lit crossroads called Jeojat. The driver, Kai, a vegetable hauler, saw my pine sap-stained clothes and simply asked, "Got lost in the forest? No one hikes at night around here." I nodded vaguely. What really happened? The cabin, frequency 0.0, the 1147 loop, no one would believe. Kai dropped me at Longjiang Commune Clinic, a poor outpost near National Route 27C between Lam, Zhong and Kan Hoa. The clinic was makeshift, rusted tin roof, flickering fluorescent lights. I thought I had escaped the time distortion, but as I stepped past the gate, the wall clock greeted me. 11:47. Both hour and minute hands locked at that cursed alignment. My heart dropped. Before I could speak, the nurse took my blood pressure. The digital monitor on the table blinked. 7. MHG, same number, without measurement. Her name tag was missing letters, only showing IT My, Nurse 11B, and the B had faded into an 8. I shuddered. Had the cabin spread to the lowlands? I stepped outside, scanning the scene. A one-story building. Wooden doors, cracked tile porch. At a tea stall near the start of the red dirt street, an old black and white TV played VTV1 morning news, but the corner timestamp was frozen at 11:47, never moving. The vendor didn't seem to notice, too focused pouring Finn coffee for 2 motorbike drivers. I asked casually, "Excuse me, what time is it?" She replied, "Almost 7, son. That clock's dead. Probably just needs a battery." I glanced at the cobweb-covered pendulum clock behind her. 11:47, of course. Battery? No. The cabin had frozen the timestamp label. The whole town assumed the clocks were broken, each person mentally adjusting the time, and thus the illusion persisted. I wandered beneath a pale sky. The Longjiang market was nearly empty. From the loudspeakers at the commune office, a news announcement crackled. Morning bulletin for the 19th of July. Strangely, the audio glitched, looping. 19th of July. 19th of July. 19th of July. 3 beats. Then a reset. What? Today, in my reality, was October. The cabin had shredded the calendar. I looked at my hand. The 38. Filled, scribbled from the forest, had faded, but the bloodied ferrite shard still hung around my neck. My hand began to tremble. Was the cabin erasing external data, blood, symbols, to assimilate me? I had to act before I became Turn 39. I ducked into the Longjiang Community Center, dusty old tiles, a cobwebbed stage. Behind it, the equipment room, rusty Vegalux amplifiers, and a 1980s Sanyo transistor radio. I extended the antenna, turned the dial, and immediately the frequency needle snapped to 0.0 FM. The signal light glowed acid green. I choked. The cabin was using the commune's public loudspeaker system to cast its voice. Outside, the speakers squealed faintly, then emitted a slow pipe. 3 pips. Morse. Code again. S inside the radio, a strange voice spoke. Longjiang Station. Position received. Roll 38 unstable, normalizing loop 47, awaiting new voice. They were broadcasting the nurse's voice. An old recording, or had the cabin just captured her live? It was unmistakable, a Binjin accent tinged with Lamjong, her breathing, the rustle of a medical coat, the phrase patient number 38, repeated slowly. The cabin had copied her tone. It was testing her voice. Hearing it use 38, the number I'd fought to invalidate, made my blood boil. They were searching for a new host, right here in town, in the broken. Mirror hanging in the corner. My face flickered, distorted like scrambled video. I touched my cheek, real skin, but the reflection stuttered. I suddenly remembered the faceless shadow in the woods. The cabin had stored my texture and now was downsampling me to make room. For the new subject, only one solution: cut off 0.0 FM transmission from the commune's PA system. I opened the circuit box. The fuse labeled for the amp read 220V power, code 1147L. Every number a cursed reminder. I pulled the fuse, but the amplifier was wired to a backup battery. Outside, the speaker still buzzed at E, steady Morse rhythm. Recalling the uncompressed noise that had saved me before, I powered on the mixer board, twisted the EQ knobs until they generated howling feedback. Sharp, high-frequency screeching blasted through the commune's loudspeakers. The cabin tried to compress it, but I continuously shifted frequencies, detuning in half steps. An algorithmic black hole the cabin struggled to learn. Result, the pip tones cut out. The speakers screamed. I quickly hit rec on the old cassette deck, recorded the feedback, rewound the tape, and overlaid it with random knocks on the desk, turning it into a sample of noise garbage. As soon as I released the play button, the speakers released a warped sound like Q, so distorted it caused physical pain. The Sanyo radio's light flickered. The frequency needle plummeted to 50 MHz, then fell off. The amplifier reeked of burnt metal and smoked. I yanked the battery terminal. Everything went silent. 1 minute, 2 minutes, across town, under the eaves of French villas, on the LED clock, of Foggia restaurant, on the baking timer in the pastry shop. Every display ticked past 11:47 to 11:48, then 11:49. Pedestrians blinked, checked their wristwatches, murmured, "Battery's dead." They didn't realize they'd just stepped out of a frozen reality into living time. And me? My reflection slowly sharpened, eyes, nose, mouth returning. I gripped the rusted screwdriver handle. The cabin hadn't deleted me. Roll 38 had resisted, successfully, but I still felt the chill. The cabin would find a new path, a new next. The sun rose beyond the ridgeline. It should have been golden, but the light was unusually pale, like fluorescent tubes behind fog. I looked up. The sky was missing clouds. No birds, just a flat blue backdrop. Even though time moved, the world felt like a film set. Every normal sound, a dream motorbike, a street vendor shouting "Banh mi," looped with short, repeat audio patterns. The cabin no longer stamped 11:47, but now simplified the world's texture to conserve memory. I realized I was standing inside a Vietnam light, a partial render of life, like a game that hadn't fully loaded. Even though I was free, the cabin had escalated, expanding into a larger format. No real day, no true night, just a luminous plaza where people walked in repeated routines. I locked eyes with a noodle vendor. She smiled the same way every 3 seconds. The steam from her bowl flickered, shifting form with each blink. Suddenly, the commune's PA system, even though I had cut power, let out a metallic coong like a temple bell. Then a synthesized voice, male combining North Central South Vietnamese accents, spoke slowly. Announcement: Turn 39 has moved into standby. The next voice is arriving. Each word echoed from the sky, from TVs, from truck radios, even from inside my ears, as if the cabin had opened an invisible broadcast channel. People in the market froze. Some tilted their heads and muttered. Did they upgrade the loudspeakers? No one was afraid. They hadn't realized it yet. The cabin had dropped a gentle trailer inviting the next host. Panic crawled through me. Who is 39? The nurse? The noodle vendor? Anyone curious enough to touch a broken radio? The cabin sowed seeds, everywhere, waiting for one to sprout. I grabbed an old portable speaker from the community center, wired a battery, and tuned to FM. The frequency needle no longer locked at 0.0, it drifted freely. Each time it brushed past 88,108 MHz background, noise always carried the phrase, the next. The cabin had spread under-track signals, no numbers. How do I counter that? In my backpack, a Zoom H4n recorder, battery at 20%. I activated overdub mode, recorded 10 minutes of imperfect silence with breath shifts, alternating deep breaths, holding for 11 seconds, half-step whistles, random taps on the recorder casing. The cabin couldn't compress silence with temporal deviation because it required fixed patterns. I rushed into the commune post office, a mossy tiled roof, broken floorboards. I begged Mr. Bay, the night operator, to let me send an emergency email. He grimaced. Net's down all the time, brother. But I noticed the fiber router lights blinking. The cabin hadn't yet touched the internet. It lived in sound. I plugged my SD card into his laptop, uploaded the WAV file, void breath VN38.wave to every junction I could. Google Drive. Zalo Volunteer Group. SoundCloud title. Blank space. Do not listen. Broadcast nationally now. I included a short message signed Koa 38. Play this file on public speakers, max volume, to break the 0.0 FM signal. If you hear your voice on air, do not respond. The next voice will escape the trap. Friends in the Vietnamese podcast group would think I'd lost it, but some crazy enough would try. Each play would be a puncture drilling into the cabin. Soon after, Mr. Bay's phone buzzed non-stop. 30 people had downloaded blank space. In the committee square, a pole speaker suddenly played my breath sequence. Inhale, hold, whistle, tap. Exactly the rhythm I recorded. Noise flooded out. At the marketplace, vendor radios screeched. But the phrase, the next, cracked, repeating 3 times, then went silent. It was 11 a.m. Sunlight surged, then blinked out, like someone dimmed reality. The sky pixelated. The town glitched, like a janky GIF file stuttering. I hugged a pillar. Reality fragmented into static. Then, poof! Streetlights, TVs, PA speakers, all shut off at once. In my ears, only real crickets and hilltop wind. At the Central Market's giant billboard, an analog watch, battery-operated, slowly ticked 12:04, 12:05. No more. 11:47. The cabin had gone dormant? I exhaled, but my relief was laced with caution. The cabin had died before. This time, imperfect silence might have forced it to reboot longer, but not forever. By late afternoon, a seasonal thunderstorm poured down. I stood under the post. Office's eve, watching the grey water flood the red dirt street. Each raindrop's tap felt like fingers drumming my spine. In the stream, a brown envelope drifted past, caught at my foot. I bent down, its cover stamped CO38, missing the final digit. I flipped it over. No address, just one red ink sentence. Please fill the blank. I shuddered and threw it into the gutter. The water carried it away, but the envelope floated, water-resistant, heading toward the drain. Inside me, the question circled again. Had the cabin already chosen 39? Or was it simply casting an open invitation, waiting for someone to pick it up? Anyone curious enough to open it would have their voice recorded, and the loop would begin anew. I clutched the bloodied ferrite piece and whispered, there is no more blank. But the sky didn't answer. That night, in a tiny rented room, I watched. My friend's computer load a Vietnamese podcast group thread. Comments poured in. That blank space file you shared is creepy, but kind of brilliant. I played it on loop. Neighbors freaked out. Ha! Hey, what's with 1147? I got it too. Someone even asked, anyone have the original 0.0 FM sample to complete the set? My heart clenched. The loop was still seductive. I replied, carefully, don't play unfamiliar voices. Broadcast your own silence. That's the only way out. I shut the laptop, wrote the final line in a new notebook. Even if the cabin no longer has day or night, choice still belongs to the real. The sigh. Next voice is coming, unless we stop passing on the fear. I closed the notebook, labeled the cover. 38. I didn't know how many more nights I would wake up at 11:47, but whenever it happened, I would whistle 3 half-step notes, a sound the cabin could never replicate. And I hoped. If one day you happen to twist a radio dial, land on 0.0 FM, and hear your own voice, 1. Turn it off immediately. Play your own blank space, a meaningless memory the cabin hasn't cracked. Remind the next one, don't let the cabin teach you how to speak. Outside, the rain had stopped. The room's clock read Woe to 13. AM ticking, second by second. I stared at it, watching until I was sure each second was real, at least until the next loop found a crack. Then I closed my eyes, for the first time in many nights, and let myself fall into sleep that smelled of warm soil, carrying one small hope, that when I opened my eyes the clock would have moved to 0214, and if not, I would whistle the 3 half-step notes again and write a new blank space, because only the real can create a silence the cabin doesn't. Understand, I am Koa, or the version that still remembers being human, and I will not become the next turn.